and growing strength in the air.
At my signal, unleash hell. How are you guys doing? Welcome to another edition of the Rational Male. Happy Mother's Day. How are y'all doing today, guys? Today we're going to talk about what killed marriage. Last week we got into chivalry, and now we're going to find out why nobody's getting married. I think you know what the answer is. You think you know what the answer is. Sure. But do you? Let's see. Now, gotta come back to this now. Hi guys, how's it going? Welcome. How's Mother's Day going for you? Good, I hope. Let's see what else I got going on here today. Today we're gonna do a little bit of a different show. I got people who really want to ask questions, so I kind of want to have a topic for you guys so we can sort of get off on a discussion topic, of course, but got a lot of guys who want to get some questions done. I haven't really done a live, like a full live, Q&A for a while. So yeah, I think we might do that today. I do want to get off on this topic today though. And I'll explain to you guys why I chose, can you guys hear me okay? There we go. Why I chose this particular topic today. Oh, we have the dog cam is actually running today too. Let's see if I can get the dog cam going. Where's the dog cam? You guys want to see the dog cam? Okay, hang on. Oh, there's a dog cam. Here we go. Let me switch him out. I'd feel bad if I didn't put Ned. That's me. That's not me. Hold on. There it is. Ned's with me today. He's in the studio. The mighty Ned, the Nedster. We just got back from a very long run. You know, what's funny is I have been doing my best to like work out as much as I can. I got one of those power tower things, and I'm still lifting, but I'm doing my body weight on this power tower thing. And so it's kind of like a Roman chair and dips and like a pull-up thing. But I've been doing a lot of running. And when you have a 2-year-old greyhound, you cannot avoid the running. So Ned is in the house today, just so you guys all know. There we go. He would have been mad if I didn't do that. So, all right. So why am I doing marriage today? I've done marriage before. The main reason is this is I'm coming up to a section in my book right now in book number 4. And as you might guess, marriage plays a big role in the Rational Male book 4 religion, right? So I have to, be very, I don't want to say sensitive, but I got to be very careful in my dealings with marriage, particularly today. I'm going to read to you from a U.S. News article here in just a second. This came out, when did this come out? April 29th. So this is not even a month old yet. And the title of it is, let me see if I can just put it on screen for you all here real quick. There it is. Okay. Okay. Well, it worked. Okay, here we go. U.S. marriage rate hits historic low. Now, when we get articles like this, Of course, you're going to get the manosphere response to it. You're going to get the tradcon response to it. You're going to get the, the feminist response to this. You're going to get the social justice response. You're going to get all kinds of, it's almost, I think a lot of people keep talking about how, like politically and I guess, from a worldview perspective, like ideologically, that we've really kind of polarized. I've heard Tim Pool talk about how just sort of the division between people's ideologies. Really, I mean, represents it in terms of like liberal and progressive versus like, say, conservative, traditional conservative kind of thing. I tend to agree. I understand exactly what he's saying, but I think it's more of a factionalization. Now, I'm not going to get into ideologies today. Of course, I don't really cover politics. I don't really even cover religion unless it gets into intersexual dynamics. And when the U.S. marriage rate falls to a historic low, that's when people have something to say about marriage and we're all going to hell in a handbasket here. So let me just really quickly here. This is really brief too. So just so you guys can get an idea, I want to give you guys some context here. So the U.S. marriage rate reached a historic low in 2018, according to federal data spanning more than a century. Social and economic shifts in the U.S. are visible through the lens of the country's marriage rate, measured as the number of marriages per 1,000 people. Excuse me. That rate has fluctuated since the early 1900s, most notably around times of great historical significance, such as world wars and everything. According to the report, according to the report from the Center for Diseases, CDC, right, the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. For example, the marriage rate reached 12 per 1,000 in 1929, right before the Great Depression, right? Before falling to 7.9 in 1932. That's when we were in full swing. It began a sporadic but upward climb, reaching an all-time high of 16.4 as the country emerged from World War II in 1946. The marriage rate fluctuated for the most part until the early 1980s, and the data shows. Okay, from 1982 until 2009, the marriage rate fell fairly steadily and then hovered around 6.8 to 7 per 1,000 through 2017. In 2018, the rate fell to 6.5, the lowest level in a 118-year period covered by the new report, and the lowest recorded since 1867, the first year for which federal government data on national marriage is available. Women's independence and gender equality is a huge factor in the long-term decline in marriage, says Philip Cohen, a sociology professor at the University of Maryland who researches family structure. Now, this is what kind of got me here, and one of the reasons I got interested in this. Again, I'm glad I haven't completely published this book yet, because this is the kind of stuff, this is the new data that I really need to back up a lot of the stuff that I'm putting into it. So let's continue here. Who researches family structure and inequality? Okay. Now, people also are delaying marriage, which I don't think is any big secret, but maybe you weren't aware of the fact that people are actually getting married older. I know that I was. So I was used to telling people that, when men and women, heterosexual marriages get together, it's usually right around 26, 27. Now that's changed. The median age now is about 30 for men and 28 for women. And that between 1978 and 2018, the share of adults between 18 and 34 who were married plummeted 59% to 29%. A record share of younger people are expected to never marry at all. And I want to also reference, I'm not going to subject you to Forbes or some of these. I'm looking at some financial stuff too to see where we're going. There's actually a website, and I think it was Forbes or something that coined the term the she economy, because by the end of this decade, anyways, women in particular between the ages of say like 28 and 35 are expected to never marry and to basically just be on their own. I probably should have dug that up, but the stats and I'm citing sources quite a bit in this book, as you might guess. So, but the she economy is big businesses right now are planning to market themselves more effectively to single women throughout this decade and probably into the next decade. But essentially the statistics are is that if you are a woman and you are not married by the time you're about, say, 34, 35, the statistical probability of you getting married is very, very low. So let's just leave it at that. Let's see. A 2017 analysis from the Pew Research Center showed that 41% of adults who had never been married but indicated that they may tie the knot in the future said financial instability was a major reason why they are not married yet. Of course, that's what everybody says. About a quarter said they were not ready to settle down. So we're thinking about 25% of them said that they just simply weren't ready to settle down, which means I haven't met the one yet. I haven't met the guy that I want to get with. Now, remember, and I don't necessarily agree with this sort of maxim, but I know a lot of guys say this, and it's pretty common where guys are, particularly in the manosphere, guys will say that women are the gatekeepers of sex and men are the gatekeepers of commitment. Now, I'll tell you why I disagree with that. Because right now, even women are the gatekeepers of commitment. They're the gatekeepers of, if you want to have a relationship with them, they're going to be the ones who are going to decide whether or not they want to be, your wife or involved with you. How do we know that? Well, primarily, we can find indications of this in just I think it was about 8 months ago, I think, where I think even Pat Campbell and I were talking about this, how there was I think it might have been in the Atlantic or something, but how women were frustrated with men because they couldn't find the quote unquote equal partner. And the equal partner, of course, is someone who has more education and more money than they do, and how men weren't economically attractive enough for them to want to commit to actually want to get into a relationship with. And so for all of our hemming and hawing about egalitarian equal partnership marriages, women simply did not want to get into a relationship with a guy who they didn't see as their equal, whether that's economically or it is intellectually or whatever. I think one of the stats I saw was that women did not want to marry a man who didn't make 58% more. And so it's like their salary plus 58% more. That would make the guy acceptable for her commitment or her marriage. And so when you see things like that, and I've said this before, I can remember when it got popularized. I think the saying, like women are the gatekeepers of are the gatekeepers of sex and men are the gatekeepers of commitment. Guys like to use that, particularly in tradcon circles. They like to use that because they think that, and maybe rightly so back in the day. I think times have changed a bit, but maybe back in the day that was true. Like, well, if a woman wants to have a husband and she wants to have a man around, or she wants to have, a quality, a high quality guy, well then, guys need to be the ones who are vetting and have standards. And you guys understand where I'm at when it comes to, men having quote unquote standards. It's all fine and dandy to say you have all these, prerequisites for a woman to qualify for your commitment, when in fact, most guys, they don't. Because most guys rely on sort of the emotional that they've been taught to follow for a very long time. And so when a woman comes along and they're following what's known as the strategic pluralism theory, they have to put all of their eggs in one basket with a woman. Standards and vetting, it sounds good. It sounds good in hindsight. It sounds good, like, well, I really checked her out. I made sure she came from a good family. And, like Pat Campbell would always say, like, you got to go and check and see what her mom looks like, or see what the family looks like before you like make any of those kind of decisions. And I'm like, well, that might have worked in the old order. It might have worked under, if you were in the 50s or 40s or whatever, you might have, wanted to quote unquote court your girlfriend or court your wife. Now remember where that comes from. So if you saw last week's show about chivalry, you know where the word court comes from. So when you hear tradcon women, quote unquote red pill women, say, oh, what happened to chivalry? What happened to nice guys? What happened to being a gentleman? If we would just have some gentlemen and they would just take responsibility and they would just be better men, then women would be better women. And what happened to courting a woman? Well, that courting, the idea, like, first of all, it's a romanticized idea, but that idea of courting comes from that bastardized version of chivalry we talked about last week. It's the romantic ideal. And usually you don't hear that until a woman gets to be, oddly enough, right around 28 years old, which, of course, is exactly the age that most women are getting married these days, right? Well, we just looked at 30 for men and 28 for women. All right, let me just keep going. People are also delaying. Okay, I already talked about that. A 2017 analysis from Pew Research says that 41% of adults who have never been married but indicate that they may tie the knot in the future. So, meaning they'd like to. I would tend to believe that 41% of women, or certainly of women, but 41% of adults who've never been married indicate they may tie the knot, meaning that they're open to it. They would like to get married. Now we're going to talk about whether that's a good idea or not in today's, the way we do marriage today. Wendy Manning, a co-director of the National Center for Family and Marriage Research at Bowling Green State University, says delaying marriage is unconcerning at a broad societal, is unconcerning at a broad societal level. But she says to a total decline in marriage altogether could have broad implications as people age, because caregiving adults for sick or older people typically fall to a spouse. So this right here, when you see stuff like this, it reminds me of the mythology that goes along with this. And it's almost like the myth of the lonely old man. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It's actually a part of book 1. And then if you haven't read it, it's on my website. It's actually in the best of year 1. So if you want to read Myth of the Lonely Old Man. But what it is it's if you don't do these things, you're going to be alone. If you don't fall in line with what women are looking for in a guy, if you don't fall in line, if you don't prepare yourself, if you don't live a life that makes you acceptable for women, well, guess what? You're not going to have any kids, and you're not going to have somebody who loves you until the very end and holds your hand as you pass into the next life. That's again, old order mythology, old order understanding, old order fears. So I'm not saying that we should probably talk about that at some point. Maybe I'll do I think I probably will do a show on just the various mythologies. So we'll get into that too. The CDC report also notes that marriage has been linked to better health and longer living. Well, yes and no. The jury's kind of still out on that. I know that a lot of tradcons like to throw that out there. They like to say, well, if you get married, you'll make more money, or you'll live a healthier life. You'll make more money because you have to make more money. That's where that goes. A healthier life is debatable. Like I said, it's one of those things. I see marriage as sort of like a lifestyle choice at this point. You can criticize it and say, I will never get married. Screw it. You can take the MGTOW path. And I understand why. I understand exactly why you would want to do that. But I think that we tend to, again, like I was saying in the beginning of the show, we tend to polarize ourselves versus, in ideologies in all of this. So are we actually living a healthier lifestyle? Well, what kind of lifestyle do you want to live, right? Can you live a certain lifestyle being married? Are you going to be healthier? Are you going to be happier in that? And how are you going to be able to sort of have a predictive framework in that? Well, I predict that I'll be happier if I just have, side chicks all the time, and I'm doing my own thing. I'm riding motor. I'm a digital nomad, right? I'm Aaron Clary. I'm driving across. I drive wherever I want to, whenever I want to, and I do what I want to do. Okay, maybe for him that works out great. I understand. So we'll talk about that here in just a second. The fear will be, this is her again. The fear will be that a declining marriage rate declining marriage is bad for society, for people's health and well-being. No, not so much. It's actually more about fertility rates. Cohen says, I think it's mostly the other way around. That is, the way our society is working, people are more likely to get married when things are going well for them. And so it may be an indicator of problems in society, but I don't think it's a cause of the problems in society. So again, it's cause and effect. Correlation is not causation, and vice versa. So again, whatever you believe about, like, it's funny how we use this kind of nebulous, ambiguous term called society whenever we want to blame some bad effect, or people aren't behaving right, so it must be because society created them. It's another thing I get into in book 4 is also about social constructionism, and I don't think enough people really understand what social constructionism is. It's the nurture side of nature versus nurture, and it's all nurture. So it's only social. The only reason you think what you think is because a nefarious society taught you this, or maybe a harmonious society taught you to believe these things. And so therefore your personality is the result of nothing but your learning. And I think you guys probably know how I feel about that. That is just simply it's blank slate equalism, and it's sort of Pollyanna naivety, if you're asking me. But the coronavirus pandemic, this is the part I wanted to get to here. The coronavirus pandemic, which became a generation-defining moment in a matter of weeks, could have its own effect on marriage rates in the U.S. in coming years. Though it's too soon to know exactly, Cohen says. Okay, we might have, just what she said again, we might have countervailing forces operating, Manning says. The economy uncertainty brought on by the virus, for example, may prompt some people to delay marriage and others to seek it. Yes, the ones who are a little bit more fearful, the ones who are less secure about themselves. Like, remember when all this came out and everybody thought it was the big get even? And you had Red Pill and MGTOW guys are waving the flag saying, look, we're finally going to see all these feminists are going to turn back into housewives. And now, wow, I came home from work and my wife's is baking cookies for me. And she's, putting food on the table and she's got a smile for me. And suddenly, she's going back to this sort of traditional, magically, right? And then you got that's one effect, right? And then the other effect, of course, was like, well, look at all the women who are doing OnlyFans right now and selling their ass online to make more money probably than they were when they, now that their HR job is gone. And so you've got two sides of the coin right there. Let me just keep going here. As couples postpone their weddings and isolated people refrain from meeting new people and dating, Cohen expects to see a downward trend for marriages, births, and divorces in the next year or so, which is funny because so many people said, oh, well, what about, a baby boom as a result of this? But just as the country saw plummets in and spikes in marriage rates around major historical events in the 1930s and 1940s, it's quite possible that if there's a rebound after this, we could see a jump in marriages or other family formation events. I would say that's doubtful. And I think it's doubtful because we have the internet now. All bets are off. I can remember when people were saying, like, when the coronavirus came and we, unemployment started, rising. Everybody thought this was going to be this is the next global depression. And I have to sort of step back and be a little bit objective about that, because in the 1930s, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have the same socioeconomic climates and environments that we are in right now. And yeah, I mean, human nature is what it is, but I think that we have a lot. There's too many variables in 2020 that weren't available in the 1930s. So that's one of the reasons I kind of like took a, oh wait, is that it? I think that's it. Okay. All right, let me move back here, guys. Remove that and kill that. There we go. So what do you guys think of that? Marriage is dead and we killed it. Are you sure? Are you sure we killed it? I wanted to talk about marriage today in those terms because we're seeing marriage rates drop so precipitously. Oh, what is this? Thank you. Hi, Rollo. Thanks so much. Saved my life. I'm a filmmaker from India. Check my film out. Autohead on Netflix. Well, there's your plug, brother. Let's discuss Goodfellas and Raging Bull sometime. Okay. Yeah, I would. I'd love to talk about like some of these old movies sometimes. I like The Godfather would be a good one. I think that at some point there was a shift, in sort of the narrative, certainly in Disney, but like in movies in general. And it's funny to see. Okay, just because you gave me such a nice little tip there, I want to tell you one thing. So during this pandemic, my daughter is here, and I'm realizing that like there's a lot of movies like that I would consider like Americana movies that she hasn't seen. And like, you know, Godfather might be one, like Jaws, Star Wars would definitely be one, but like there's other movies like that to be an American or be a guy, whatever, that you kind of have to see. I think might be a little bit different, like whether you're a guy or a girl, but like I would say like The Godfather is definitely one. But some people will say, well, The Exorcist, you have to see The Exorcist because that's a classic sort of American movie. Or like you can even go back. I mean, you can go back to like what is it? Citizen Kane or something like that. I mean, if you want to go that far back, or like Blues Brothers, for instance, like there's, or Rocky, like Rocky's another good one. I think that we should probably come up with like a list of movies that I think all red pill guys should see at some point. I think Blue Valentine should definitely be on that, just sort of as a warning. So I'm thinking about what we could watch from like the 70s, and then and you guys are gonna laugh, but like Smokey and the Bandit, I think was a good movie too. I mean, I think it's goofy, it's funny, it's stupid, but what's interesting about it is I hadn't seen that movie in probably 20 years, 25 years, something like that. I can't even remember the last time I watched it. It was on like TNT or something like that. And I watched it, and this is the full movie version, so they can swear a little bit, but they're really hesitant to swear. They can't say, you know, F off or something like that. They can't. In fact, that's what they say. Do the word or do the letters FO mean anything to you? It's so funny because like I can go on Twitter right now and people will just call me all kinds of names you couldn't say in the 70s. And I thought that was interesting, but I tell you what was really interesting is the presumed gender dynamics between Burt Reynolds' character, which he's the bandit, and the girl he picks up, who's sort of the love interest in the movie. And she goes, her little handle is Frog or something like that. And it's interesting to see how like he's the stereotypical alpha and how she responds to his alphaness. And if you have, I'm not saying it's like some red pill movie, but if you look at that movie, I keep telling you guys, you know, go check out like Mrs. Doubtfire, or go look at some of these, or like Forrest Gump, and you look at that with a red pill lens, and you go, oh my God, you know, it's a horror movie, right? Well, go back a little bit further, like rewind a little bit further. It's funny to me that if you go and you look at like a movie like Empire Strikes Back, where Han Solo is, you know, about to be frozen in carbonite, and Princess Leia says, I love you, and just like a pimp, he's like, I know, right? Imagine trying to do that. I mean, unironically, like if you saw that in like Guardians of the Galaxy, and Chris Pratt, Star-Lord, whatever, and he said that, it would make him look like a ridiculous buffoon. But in 1981, 1982, that was some serious. You know, that was a serious line from a guy from a scoundrel, right? From an alpha. Really, think about it. If we were talking about like alphas and betas and deltas and sigmas, that's the sigma male right there. And I thought that was really interesting. And it's a comedy and it's stupid. I know it's redneck, but I thought it was funny. It still holds up. And so, but the reason I was interested in watching it was watching the interplay between the female and the male in there. You know, Burt Reynolds he's got the red shirt, he got the cowboy hat, and he's a good looking dude. I mean, Burt Reynolds, like, you gotta admit, Burt Reynolds was a pretty good looking dude back in the day. And in fact, I think like Sally Field and him started dating after that. But it just the presumption, just like and it's natural. It just flows, right? Like that's just how it works. So go check those things out. You know, you owe it to yourself, I think. I mean, if you're going to go back and you, like I said, the homework for last week was to go and look at like some old movies, like say from the 90s. Now rewind a little bit further, go back to the 80s, and look how things work out. Rocky might be a good one. I mean, if you want to like the first one and the second one, Rocky's a good one because like in the first one, he gets his ass kicked. So you might want to have a look at some of those too. That was pretty good. I like the Blues Brothers, man. I thought the Blues Brothers. I would say that that's an Americana movie. Now I'm getting off track, but there's your homework. Go and check those things out too. You owe it to yourself to at least. Porky's. No, not Porky's. Okay. So I wanted to get into a few things here because I know this has been talked about before. I know not by me necessarily, but other guys have talked about this too. Like what's killing marriage? Like why is marriage dead? Why is it at an all-time low? You can also rewind back to, I think 2019, or it might have been 2018, where the general survey statistics general statistics survey was that a point of reference in that was that men 18 to 29 were reporting being sexless for like over the last year or over the last 10 years or something like that at like 3 or 4 times the rate than since they had I'm probably butchering this, but since they had started taking the statistics for this. And of course, again, it was one of those moments where MGTOW said, see here, it's because women only want alpha chads, and maybe they got a point, right? And so here we are. And I see you guys. Hang on, I will catch up to you guys today. I'm going to try to stay on top of my game here today. Now, here's the other thing: is if you're giving me super chats, I'll do my best to stay on top of this. If I don't get to it, hit me up an email and say you didn't get to me. So, but I'll do my best to do that. About 5 years ago, I've been striving to reach those blue pill male ideals. Now, my 30s, noticing epiphany phase, females noticing me, taking me interest in me. Okay. Yeah, Miguel, that is very, very common. I have an essay called Moment of Clarity. And it's because what you're going through right now is so common. I think I might have wrote 2, but most guys will get to be about 30 years old, and particularly that's a dangerous point for a lot of guys. There's two really dangerous points in a man's life is when he hits 18 and he had a girlfriend in college or something like that, or he had has a love interest somewhere, and he will change his career, his ambitions, his college plans, whatever it is that he wants for his life, and he will move somewhere, or he'll do something to facilitate that, or maybe he won't move anywhere. Maybe he'll stay where he's at. So the guy will do whatever whatever he thinks will make him, well, certainly facilitate his relationship, but also a lot of guys do this because they feel that they have a duty to do that. Like, it's my masculine duty to be a good, sensitive, supportive guy, and she needs to become more, and I need to become less, and so I need to be supportive and help her out, and and do the right thing, kind of thing. And that really screws up a lot of guys early on in their lives, because they're finally at a point in their lives where they can make decisions that will affect them for the rest of their lives. So that's number one. The next one is right around 30, and it's imperative that a man be red pill aware by 30, if not preferably before that. But it is imperative for you to be aware of the game that you're involved in and women's mating strategies at that point, because their mating strategies translate into their life strategies. I'm going to talk about how that happens here in today's show. But that's a time where a lot of guys are kind of bewildered because they think their ship has come in. And this is where you'll hear a lot of guys who are particularly blue pill beta guys, and women are suddenly interested in them, and they think it's because they did something right. And in a way they did, but they did something right in the sense of they're fulfilling that woman's mating strategy, her long-term mating strategy, which is to find, mate with the alphas in her prime, and then settle with the beta when she gets to her epiphany phase. If you're unaware of that at 30, this, again, I was talking about betas and waiting 3 weeks ago, I think. That's when women start complimenting you and saying, I can't believe I finally found the guy that you've been here all along. Oh, wait for me. Tell you what, if we're not married at 30 years old, we'll make a promise to each other, and we'll get married when we're 30. Like, who does that serve? Does that serve the guy, or does that serve the woman at that point, particularly in a feminine primary society? So yeah, that's another dangerous point, because guys will believe it's very flattering to a blue pill beta mindset when a woman says, "Oh, you're so great. Gosh, you're just really not like other guys." And that's what they've been doing probably for most of their lives, is trying to separate themselves from all of the jerks that she has been, having sex with and partying with, and like what I call the party years between, like, say 18 and about 28. So in that 10-year span. Now they love to believe, and women know this, they love to believe that that men, or they believe that women go through sort of this journey of self-discovery. Because that's all women ever promote, is the idea, well, I had to go through all those jerks to find the one who really loves me, and it's you, Mr. beta male guy who doesn't know any better and has a great job. And now I'm looking for somebody that's a little bit more stable. And what I think is funny is there used to be a time where we would tell guys this, like it was guys that we used to tell that we had to kind of say, you know, you're out there sowing your wild oats. Guys don't sow wild oats anymore. Most guys don't have, like, it's dangerous to go out there and sow your oats, right? It's dangerous to, you know, you can get thrown in jail for even trying to sow your wild oats now. But women don't have that problem. They don't have that word because they're the ones who the onus is on, right? So it's women who are out there and partying and have their party years. And again, they are the gatekeepers to sex, whereas men are supposedly the gatekeepers of commitment. And so you'll get a guy who's about 30 years old, and suddenly all these women are flattering his ego, saying, "Oh, you've done so well for yourself." And guys are like, "Yeah, I have. Oh, look, suddenly women like me." You know, they don't, and unironically, because they're not used to having that kind of attention. They're not used to women coming onto them. They don't even know what an IOI, indicator of interest. They don't even know what that is. They just know that this girl who's gone through hell and had to get through the bad boys and the jerks who used her and abused her. In fact, they'll blame not the women, they'll blame the guys that the women chose to get with. So you got these blue pill beta guys at 30 years old. Woman is in the middle of her epiphany phase. They think that she's damaged and she's hurt and she's, you know, sort of coming to Jesus because of the players that she chose and she had a great time with, and you know, now suddenly she's somebody new. Well, she's not. She's just following her long-term mating strategy, and you happen to be the guy who is available. You happen to be the guy who fits that bill. You're the key to that castle. So in a way, yeah, you do control it. Most guys don't realize that. They don't understand that. And then even the ones who do don't feel like they should be in charge. They still believe in the egalitarian nonsense. And that's a real, you want to know what's killing marriage? The idea that we need to have equal partnerships. That's what's killing marriage. The idea that an egalitarian, even Steven 50-50 marriage it should be the ideal. And that's half of the equation. I'm going to talk about what our expectations are, our old school, old order, old social contract expectations of a man in marriage versus our new order expectations, or our new order entitlements for women in this new, you know, in the post-feminist age, in the post-sexual revolution age. So women will rely on the idea of, well, we need to be even, Steven, and equality for both of us, and nobody's above each other. But they still want a man that they can look up to. They still want a guy who takes responsibility and is a good father and does all these things that the old social contract told him to. But you don't get any authority. That's a key element. You want to know what's killing marriage is that discrepancy, right? Or that imbalance, which is responsibility versus authority. And I've talked about this 100 times with I think Pat Campbell and some other guys too. And that's actually my primary argument when I'm talking to tradcons who say, well, marriage is a great idea. It's just because men are ridiculous and men want to be kid adults. They want to prolong their adolescence. They're not going to school. They're not learning a trade. They're not, you know, preparing themselves so that at 30 that they can be selected by a woman who's already gone through her party phase and has, you know, 2 or 3 kids from 2 different fathers, and feel like it's their responsibility to be parentally invested in another man's, you know, children. Why are we not seeing, you know, where is all that about? Well, that's because guys have, particularly in the tradcon set, have a, oops, hang on one second, guys. I just lost my camera. Wait, let's look at Ned. Where's Ned? There's Ned. Ned's still sleeping. He's going to sleep. He's going to sleep this whole damn show. You watch. All right, let me move on a little bit. I'm going to catch some of you guys. Let me catch up. I know these are getting ahead of me. Tiger the Brave, God forbid I miss yours. Thanks for today's topics. Really good stuff. Okay. What is this? Miguel again, hubby position. I recently found red pill knowledge. Elder females in my life react viscerally when I refuse to sign up to play Captain Save-A-Ho. Yeah, I'm sure they do. They probably think you're a misogynist. They probably think that you're a selfish, self-centered, jerk. That's what they think. And really what that means is you're doing it right. And yes, another bulletproof coffee. Thank you guys. I'm still waiting for my affiliate marketing dollars. How easy would it be for me to just do a 5-minute thing for you guys? Huh? I had a question. I think it was last week, Miguel, about how guys can be like in their 30s, right? Like early to mid 30s. And you might be in a particularly if you're in a Latin family, I think they expect you to be married by then. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe could be Irish too. I don't know, whatever, but a certain Italian for sure. There's an expectation that by a certain age, you're going to be married. I watched this documentary one time I think it was taking place in China. And it was this woman who was, I think she was like 32, and she's an American woman. She went over to China. She went over to China to investigate sort of like the sexual marketplace in China. And literally, it's a sexual marketplace. She went to this park where the mothers and fathers of eligible young men and young women would get together, and they had sort of matchmakers, and some of them are female and some of them are male. And the one that she was interviewing, this matchmaker, was male, and he has this sort of binder full of like pictures of eligible, single men and women, and trying to basically put them together. And it was fascinating because usually they, at least in that culture, at least in that, maybe things are different. I've always said, we're in a global sexual marketplace right now. You can easily, Chinese people can just go on Tinder just as easy as American people can, right? Or maybe not in China, right? But this was a thing, it's like sort of this old order, old school, old social contract. Mothers and fathers they want the best for their kids. They're essentially, it's them trying to arrange a marriage for their daughter or for their son. And there's a list of criteria. You got to be thin. You got to be attractive. The male, the husband, potential husband, has to be employed. Has to make a certain amount of money. Has to be a certain height. And this is China, so has to be a certain height. And women have to be of a certain age, or else they get called what are called yellowed pearls. I think that might have been the name of the actual documentary, was Yellowed Pearls. And after a certain age, like I think it's like 26 or 27, that's when a Chinese woman, at least in this thing, was a yellowed pearl. She loses her luster. She's not been, it's like fruit rotting on the vine. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. And what was funny to me was during this whole thing, of course, and as you might have guessed, the American woman, 32 years old, says, well, what about me? Right? She's 32 years old. She's pretty attractive too. But first of all, she was too old. And the guy just flat out said, well, you're too old. Most of the guys, or most of the men that he represented would not have anything to do with her because she's just simply too old. She's like, well, I've never been married. That was another strike against you. If you've been divorced in that, forget it. You weren't going to get into that binder of single people. And so, no, you're too old. It doesn't matter that you've never been married or have kids or anything like that, but you are not what most of these guys are looking for. And then, of course, she was much too tall. And just basically ran down all these reasons why she would be ineligible for most of the guys that he represented. And of course, what happens is then she gets the typical American female indignation. I can't believe it, because what she believes in is a romantic ideal. It's an egalitarian ideal, but it's also the romantic ideal. And I wanted to make sure I covered that in this show, because that, I think, is where we find a lot of what's killing marriage right now, is this conflict between old order expectations, old order. Like when I talk to guys who say, oh, my mom wants me to get married, I'm 30 years old and she thinks I'm gay, right? Or I'm not following my family, I'm not doing what my family says I'm supposed to be doing. And there's like, I mean, we really want to rewind the tape all the way back. It used to be about prearranged marriages. I talked about that before when I was talking about chivalry, how marriages back in the time of chivalry were really just sort of political arrangements for the nobility, or else for the peasants. For everybody else, it was just sort of a I mean, there might have been some romance, there might have been some genuine attraction and arousal, but it was really sort of two people coming together for survival, to run the farm, to do something together and, have a family and hopefully have a lot of kids and perpetuate yourself. So it was a means to an end, but there's an old school understanding that I think we're still clinging to right now. It's a pre-sexual revolution social contract. It might have been true for the greatest generation, right? And remember, the greatest generation, the women of the greatest generation, post or the World War II generation, were just as hypergamous as anybody else. So don't think that, well, they just were, just things were different. It must have been society. No, they were just as hypergamous as anybody else. It was the social conditions that limited that. And so when I was reading this article here about, the decline in marriage, as I just spouted off to you, is that during certain social upheaval, you will see spikes or drops in marriage rates. And I think what's funny, and I've got I don't have it with me right now, but I used this statistic in the book, the rise in divorce that comes right after the sexual revolution. So from like 1965 to 2020, you will see right at that point, boom, straight up. Rise in abortions, boom, straight up. Rise, or the sinking, marriage has been kind of fluctuating. As soon as we hit the sexual revolution, like even the article here was saying, since 1982 to 2020, like now this is like as low a marriage rate, was it 6.5? As low a marriage rate has ever been recorded. So what happened? Well, we want to come up when we ask what happened, what's killing off marriage. That's where we insert egalitarianism. That's where we insert expectations of men to be married, right? And not just your family, but like this old school thinking, this old order way of thinking. Well, men should be men. It's up to men. It's men's responsibility to sacrifice themselves. It's men's responsibility it's always been men's responsibility to better themselves and it's their burden of performance, right? I've talked about this before. But the burden of performance is how you're rated. You will never hear me talk about the burden of performance in terms of expectations. Okay. People will rate you by what you've done. But if you've been single and you've made $1 million for yourself and you've, you're living a particular lifestyle that you want to be living, you're happy in your lifestyle, your burden of performance doesn't necessarily have to be, oh, I'm going to get married and I'm going to have, 2.5 kids and a dog in the yard and white picket fence. That doesn't make your burden of performance that much better. Remember, everything I talk about when it comes to red pill stuff is always in the objective, as objective as I can personally make it. And I think you guys need to think of whatever I talk about in terms of what if or why. Why is it that this is the way it is? Because what happens is when I get into topics like this, and of course, as soon as this came out in April 29th of this year. That's when these stats come out. As soon as that happens, you'll get PragerU comes out and they go, well, the reason for marriage is because men aren't living up to their responsibilities. Again, old order thinking, old order expectations, and blinders on as to what the real reasons are, because the real reasons don't fit into that ideological mold. The same thing happens for like liberal progressives, for people who think, well, if men weren't such chauvinist, misogynistic, toxically masculine guys, then this wouldn't be this way. If they could just agree, it's because men are just ignorant and don't want to, to have an equal partnership or something like that. And we take the result, or we take the stats and we force fit it into, what it is that we think should be the ideal utopian solution between men and women. So you're naturally going to get those things. And of course, the traditional conservatives, and I'm probably going to pick on them a little bit today, but don't think don't think the egalitarian blank slate equalists get off the hook. But like in this case, because I'm writing the book on religion, in the marriage side of things, one thing that you will never see most traditional conservatives really acknowledge in any significant way is the discrepancy or the conflict between responsibility and authority. So their solution, the traditional conservative solution to raise the marriage rate is men need to sack up, right? Men need to take more responsibility. We don't need less masculinity. We need more masculinity. Yeah, fantastic. I agree. What do they get for that? Because as I've said before, responsibility without authority is slavery. And you will never be able to sort of pound that into the psyche of the traditional, certainly not in America, but the traditional conservative idea of what men ought to be and what women ought to be. Let me see if I can catch up here, guys. Sorry, my bad. You guys are getting way ahead of me on these things. And I know we're going to do, I swear to God, we're going to do some like full on Q&A here in just a second. Let's see. Do you think the 80-20 rule on dating, online dating, is getting worse or already is? For example, maybe it's really 90-10. I've said that before. I thought it was getting worse before where we're at right now. I think that, yes, I do think it's getting worse, but don't let that be a distraction to you, because the problem when we talk about, like, what you're talking about is called the Pareto principle, which is 80% of your results come from 20% of the effort. That's where it comes from. It's sort of like Occam's razor, right? Whatever the easiest answer is usually the right one, right? So what guys get confused about is that, well, 80% or 20% of the guys are banging 80% of the girls. That's not the Pareto principle with respect to like the red pill or hypergamy. 100% of women are looking for the top 20% of guys. And that's by order of degree. So you will see like if a woman is a 6, and even if she believes she's an 8, she's not going to probably get a 9 or a 10 of a guy, even though she believes that she's entitled to that. So they're, like, guys love this. They love the worst case scenario, particularly in the black pill community, right? And I'm just going to use that as the catch-all phrase here. The guys who are into the doom pill, they think that if they're not in that top 10%, then they just forget it. I'm done. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to be me and go, eat Cheerios and watch anime. I don't know, whatever it is that you guys do. No, that's not it. Okay. Hypergamy is not a straight jacket. So before you say, well, like when guys ask me that, do you think that it's really 90-10? Do you really think that that it's worse than it is? What if I told you that I thought it was things were getting better, like women were actually into 30% of guys and 70% of guys were going to be sexist? It's still a really, even if it was 50-50, it would still be a pretty bad, if it's not like, if you're not like at the top of the heap, who cares, right? I think when guys ask me that, it's usually because they want Rollo Tomassi to give them permission to quit. I'm not going to do that. What else do you want from me, Drake Truman? Salute and happy days. Would you talk about book 1 social order versus the new book 2? New book 2? I think you mean book 4. I'm not sure what you're asking me there, man. I do talk about social orders quite a bit. Let's see. Marriage is financial ruin in this day and age. Yes, it is. And I'm going to get onto that here in just a second. Let me see if I can back up just a touch. I do want to catch up to the rest of these things before I continue here. Sam Whiskey asks, hey, Rollo, the biggest supporter of gay marriages are divorce attorneys. Yes, I'm sure they are, because that's going to be their bread and butter for a little while. Klaus says, does your wife follow your content? Yes, she does. Do you discuss it at all? I do if it's something that she's interested in. I've been doing this for so long that, like, it's like people ask me that and say, well, does your wife know what you're talking about? I'm going to go tell your wife and then she'll leave you. So do what I want you to do. I used to get that too. When I was like back in my SOSOV days and like right around when I first started my blog, I would get women in my comments and they would go, does your wife know you're saying all of this? I'm gonna dox you, right? And it wasn't, I'm gonna go get you fired. It was, I'm gonna tell your wife, so you'll shut up. That was the whole thing, right? I'm like, be my guest. Go right ahead. I would encourage it. Go right ahead. So anyways, just do you discuss it at all with her? Where should the line be drawn in discussing red pill things with women? Okay, good question. If you are in any way interested in a woman intimately, like you want to, if you're trying to sarge her, or you think maybe in the future you want to get with her, never tell her that you're red pill. Never tell her, you know me. I will deny it. Hide my book, right? Don't tell her that you are red pilled, because that'll be because curious girls will be like, oh, what is red pill? Right? And then what happens is, and here's why I say that. It's not because I want you to be like dishonest or anything. Like, you could tell her if you want, but if you do, understand that you are probably, you will be engaging in what I call, or what other people call the observer effect. Observing a process changes the process. So, and that's why you're asking me about my wife right now. Because what if, like, if I'm getting in an argument with my wife, which is very, very rare. Okay. If I'm having a disagreement, let's just say, most guys will say, well, or if I'm like trying to flirt with my wife, or I'm using dread on my wife, or I'm maybe not even doing it consciously. Right. If I'm in some way, employing or pass a shit test, that's a really good one. If I pass a test, like a fit, now I swore. If I pass a test, is it because I'm going, oh, I guess I'll do this as the red pill response, or is it because I'm really like that? That's another thing that guys will always say, is they'll say, well, do you game your wife? No, I don't, because I am the game. My natural internalized response is to do what I know about women. I would respond in a way as such that I know women would react. I know women's nature well enough that becomes my own response, right? So what happens though is when guys are too literal, I would say this: don't tell your wife about the red pill or your involvement, or you trying to learn this kind of stuff until it's internalized for you, because she will use it against you. This is what you're probably asking me, is like, well, doesn't she say, well, you're using amuse mastery right now, or you're trying to be cocky and funny, huh? Just like mystery, huh? Oh, is that what you're using on me now? Huh? That's what you're worried about, right? The problem is you don't want to get to that point. You don't allow it to get to that point. My wife's read book 1. I think she might have read half of like book 2. Book 3. If it was interesting, like, she'll probably read book 4, I'm sure, because this is that's interesting to her. But when it comes to like day-to-day life, no, not so much. I mean, I'll tell you what, here's what I do. It's been my practice to do this for a while, is if I write something on The Rational Male, if I write something on my blog and I think it would interest her, I say, hey, why don't you check out, what did you think of my post? Sometimes she'll have already read it, and then sometimes she'll just go and read it, and then we talk about it a little bit, but that's really as far as it goes. So, because like I said, she agrees with probably about 97% of what I talk about. And the last, and so what do you think the first thing people say? Well, what about the 3%? What does she disagree with you with? I would say it's stuff that is unflattering, just like any other woman would. So, let's see. Marriage is supposed to be mercy for a woman from abandonment and inheritance for a man. Territory that is his. Yes. Oh man, Michael Kerr. That's a good one. Go and read. If you have not read this book, go read Alpha God by Dr. Hector Garcia. He is very anti-masculine and very much I don't know that he identifies as a male feminist, but I think probably ideologically he does. But he does a great breakdown of this right here. For a woman, marriage was supposed to be, there's a contract, it was sort of a social contract between men and women. And that social contract also, I should say this, also included the presumption that the babies are going to be yours. So at least on paper, marriage was supposed to be an agreement that if I take care of you and I provide for you as a man and I protect you and we have babies, that those babies are going to be my babies. And that was part of forsaking all others, right? That was part of your marriage vows, to having to hold sickness and health, for richer, for poor, till death do us part. Look at the traditional marriage vows. Here's your homework. Go read the traditional marriage vows and look at those marriage vows from a red pill perspective, an objective red pill perspective. And whose interests are they serving? I can see why there would, why people would say, well, it serves a woman or serves a man. But in a red pill perspective, see what you think about that. Klaus and Klaus, I talked to you. Saruba Gupta, most eye-opening book I've ever read. Well, thank you, my friend. Miguel, talk to you. Chris Von Erich, I missed you, brother. Sorry. It says for $12, you better get to this. Okay. I will have our friend Donovan Sharp on my program Thursday at 9 p.m. Oh man, I'm so glad for you. There's your plug. There's your $12 plug. Chris, good for you. Chris, post that out and I'll retweet it for you. Miguel, again, let's see, 5 years I've been striving to reach those. Okay, I already talked to that one. Renegade Show says Rollo. Also, John Wayne movies like McClintock, of course, old school stuff, right? I mean, what's funny is if you go back to like those old ones. Let me finish what you said here. Hatari, Donovan's Reef, all of those movies had great dynamics between Wayne and the female lead. Yeah. And those are the ones that like feminists will go back and go, oh man, those 1950s male chauvinism. Yeah, but why? Why is it? What is it about that old school masculinity that women would find offensive today? Look at homework. Go and look at old school movies and see what you think with your red pill lens. Mage 64 says my friend is considering a woman in the epiphany phase stage 37 as a good candidate to make a family. If she's 37, she is well out of the epiphany phase. As a good candidate to make a family and kids. In fact, she left him recently and said she really needs kids now. He's 35 and is considering a child with her. Your thoughts? Okay, sorry I didn't get to you, Mage, but there you go. So my thoughts are this: she's older than you, 37. She is not in her epiphany phase. She is just about to get into her 40s. If she has not had kids by now, the likelihood of her conceiving, at least in a healthy way, is minimal. Don't let anybody say, like, a lot of women will say, well, you can be 40, I can go get fertility therapy, whatever. I'll freeze does she have her eggs frozen too? Why is she still single and childless at 37? That's the question. You need to ask him that. Why is she still 37 and single and childless? Why? Why do you think that is? Now he's 35 and if he's looking at her as a good candidate for a future with this person, he's 35 years old. He's getting into his prime. He's into his, I would say that right around 36, 38 years old is when, assuming he's made the most of himself. I don't know. You didn't give me enough details to really suss that out, but let's just say for sake of argument, he's sort of hitting his stride in life. Why would you want to get with a woman who's childless at 37 years old and, is where she is in life? And why? Okay, you just said just a second ago, or I just read this. You say, yeah, this woman is in her epiphany phase at 37. Let's just say for sake of argument that's even accurate. Okay, that means she's prolonged her party years on average for an extra almost about another 10 years, right? If I say party years are between 18 and 28, now she's 37. She's almost 38. So yeah, I'm sure she's very interested in some sort of long-term commitment. I'm sure she's also probably been one of these. I'm sure you've probably heard her utter these words. Where are all the nice guys? What happened to those guys? How come I can't find a decent guy? Where are all the nice guys? I learned my lesson. I'm sure you probably heard that. Women who are between the ages of like say 18 and like 24, You will never hear that come out of their mouths because they don't care. They don't know and they don't care. It's not even an afterthought. It doesn't become a priority until they can no longer compete intersexually. I shouldn't say intrasexually. So when a woman's hindbrain, like people ask me, I should really I need to do a show on the wall, and I need to like get women involved in it too, because that would probably, I don't want to throw out red meat for the red pill, but that would be a pretty good show if I could get like 2 or 3 women on here and say, look, here's the truth about the wall. Particularly if I could talk to a woman who's like, say, 39 or 40 years old, who's still single, or a 37-year-old woman who's still looking for, Mr. Right. The wall doesn't happen here, right? I've seen very good looking 38-year-old women, very good, very nice, Fitness America pageant, girls. Okay. They're not even girls at that point. Right. But the wall doesn't happen here. The wall happens here. The wall is, I can no longer compete at the same level that I did before. And whether that's true or that's not is irrelevant. It's here. And usually that happens right around when women say, oh, my biological clock is ticking. I got to do something. I need a baby. We talk about that in the red pill all the time, like baby rabies, right? Oh, she's got baby rabies. That's remember what I was just saying a minute ago. Like when you get to be 30 years old and you're a blue pill beta male and you're ignorant and stupid about any of this stuff, that's when women will try to lock you down with a kid, because they like, who is she gonna lie to? Who does a woman lie to when it comes to pregnancy? If a woman is going to cuckold you, is she going to say, is she going to go and have a baby with the blue pill guy who is a good financial prospect and tell him, oh, it's your baby? Or is she going to take that baby and go to the alpha male and say, well, it's actually really your baby? The irresponsible jerk who she enjoys, having sex with in the foam cannon party in Cancun on spring break. Is she going to do that? No, she's going to do the opposite. She's going to have that guy's kid. And I would challenge you to find, and whether it's on Twitter or in a story or whatever, I would challenge you to find an incident of cuckoldry, whether it's like proactive or reactive, where that woman is having a baby from a guy who is a blue pill beta kind of loser guy and trying to convince the alpha dude that baby is his. You won't see that happen. And if it does, it's very, very rare. It's almost universally, it's the other way around. The woman is having sex with the guy who's fun and exciting, and she's trying to use that baby to lock him down. He doesn't want anything to do with her. Again, commitment versus sexual access. She's having the baby. Who's she going to try to fool? The guy who makes lots and lots of money, or the guy who's just kind of like, maybe it's another guy, but he certainly doesn't have the financial prospects. Who's she going to try to trick? Who's going to be the cuckold in that situation? It's going to be the guy who's makes the most amount, who's going to be able to support it, right? That's why that happens. That's why that's the preference anyways. So, I don't want to, women are going to listen to this and go, I can't believe you think so. Well, statistically, that's what happens. So when you're that guy, when you're that 30-year-old dude and you're blue pill beta and you're ignorant, yeah, women will flatter you and want to have sex with you. And they're not giving you their sexual best because they save that for the guy in the foam cannon party. But they're going to give you access. Certainly, women will. Like guys always say this, well, I'm beta, or he's a chump. Yeah, he gets laid all the time. Yeah, I'm sure he does. Blue pill guys get laid all the time. They're not good at it. They're not, they're not the most desirable guys in the world. The guys who are, the 20%ers get laid way more than you do, but that doesn't mean you don't get it. Like guys always say, nice guys finish last because she finishes first. Yeah, well, you're that nice guy. You're that blue pill guy. It's not that you're not going to get rewarded. If there was no reward in it, you would never have anything to do with her. There has to be some reward. That's behaviorism 101. Right? Reward. You got to be, what is it? If you want a modified behavior, you reward desired behavior. How do you do that? Oh, yeah, you can. Yeah, okay, I'll spread my legs for you. Okay, it was fine. It was good. Yeah. Oh, what's this hot fireman calendar over here? I don't worry about that. I'm over that now. So that's why that's a dangerous time a very dangerous time for guys, because women will try to lock you down with either a baby that is yours or maybe that is not yours. That's why you need to be in the know. Yes, Ned is indeed living the hard life. You want to see the dog cam again? No, I won't do that to you just yet. Let's see. John Wayne, I got to that. My friend is considering a woman. Okay, we talked to that. Domingo, thank you for that $1 CHF, whatever that currency is. Man, I have, since I started YouTubing, I had no idea like how many different currencies there are out there. Now I know. Kirkpatrick says, Rollo, what are your top 3 red pill movies? Okay, it's not red pill per se, but if you want a red pill education in what not to do, and it is the most blue pill example that I think red pill men need to watch in order to understand, watch Blue Valentine. That is like one of the most, I've probably suggested that movie more than any other movie. And I've been doing so since it came out, which was like back in 2012, I think. Really a good one. Now, as far as like red pill movies, as in like, oh, I'm inspired to be more masculine or whatever, there's nothing that's out there. I think that like people say, well, what about Fight Club? Yeah, okay. But even Fight Club it kind of pusses out at the end. So what are good ones to see? I don't know. It's a good question. I think people, like, when they ask me this, they say, well, what's a good red pill movie? Do you want a red pill movie to educate you, or do you want one to inspire you, or do you or to verify, confirm what it is that you believe? Because if you're looking for a red pill movie to sort of confirm like red pill dynamics and the way, a more natural dynamic between men and women, you're going to have to like rewind almost all the way back to like the early 80s to the 70s to the 60s, unfortunately, to see how another generation interpreted gender dynamics, because we are so far beyond that. Like I'm listening to like when I'm driving down to like, Happy Mother's Day, by the way. I went down to go see my mom on Friday, and I'm listening to like books on tape kind of, or like Audible. Listen to Audible and not my own book, thank you. But I'm listening to some fiction stuff, and it seems to me like every time I'm listening, particularly modern like science fiction, there is this necessity to write in, whether it's like this, it's just this obligatory, like, not like the character has nothing to do with the plot, but they have to throw it in there because we need a strong female fighter pilot. We need something, and it doesn't matter. It serves no purpose to the plot. It's just that they throw it in there because that's what they feel like they have to do. And you know what? Today, people just like, oh, great, cool, yeah. It makes no difference to the actual plot of the story, but like it's so ubiquitous right now that I don't think we really pay attention to it. So I don't know. Blue Valentine, I would definitely say would be a good one from sort of the anti-red pill, but still give you a red pill education. That's a really good one. I'll think about that. I will. I'll come up with some answers on that one. And if anybody has any suggestion, I'm open to it. Michael Kerr, I'm going to give that $2, Michael, to Ned directly. If you want to go into the Ned Tomassi treat fund, just let me know that's what your super chat is for, and we're gonna get some. Where do we get him? We get him the grillers. Those griller treats. He likes those. Randy Marsh says, open opinion on Julian Blank getting married. Oh, thank you for keeping it on topic, my good friend. Let's see. Oops, wait a minute. Can I get to that one? Did I blow it? I probably did blow it. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, I'll come back to that. Okay. So, Julian Blank is a grifter. Let's just be honest. Owen, I think, Owen Cook as well. RSD. I think right now it is 2020. I used to lock horns with people on my own blog and my own comments and on Twitter. And there are especially the diehard PUAs who I still have a special love for in my heart. But because they are pure game, and I learned a lot about like behavior and game and what people, how game works and the dynamics and the why, what is the mechanics behind why game works. And I will begrudgingly admit that even in his prime, Julian Blank had some pretty good infield stuff. Even Owen Cook, aka the old school Tyler Durden guy, also from Mystery Method and from the mystery years. They had really good infield stuff. Now people will say, well, that was just paid hookers or something like that. Well, okay, but even if it wasn't, it was still pretty good in terms of explaining why Kino worked, or Muse Mastery, or Cocky Funny, or they would go through a lot of practicals, right? Like one of the exercises was, and I still do this today, and of course everybody jokes about it now, but I go, how would you open? And that used to be an old PUA technique, which was they'd show you a picture of a girl, and it was like some girl that you would never open in your life. Or they'd be at a club, or they would be somewhere else, or be a goth girl, or it'd be a nerd girl, or it'd be a black girl, or it'd be a Latina, or it'd be somebody that they were unused to like approaching as a woman, right? Like trying to get from, first base to second base kind of thing, right? That, like, how would you open that? And now when I post something like that on Twitter, people laugh and go, oh, how would you open? And I'm like, well, this is an exercise. You have to rack your brains to figure out what would you say? Like, what's your read? It was really an exercise in cold reading, so that you could say, okay, well, what can I tell from the way this girl looks? And of course, everybody online today goes, I would never open her. Ha, I have more respect for myself. Well, that's not it, asshat. I'm asking you, like, rack your brain. If you were, what would you do? And most guys, they're domain dependent, right? They don't want to, unless she's in Barnes and Noble or I meet her in Bible study, I don't want to, she's not a quality woman. Okay, well, you're excused. And what would you do? But that came from like old school stuff. That came from Julian Blank. That came from mystery. That came from the old pioneers, I think. And I think they had a lot. Where we are today because of those guys, because they asked the right questions and they had the balls to go out there and say, you know what, these are social and psychological experiments that no one else could do. And it's not like they set out to do that. They just want to get laid. If it worked, they'd use it. That's how it worked. If being virtuous and being like a nice guy worked and they would use it. That was the point, right? How do I get from point A to point B? That's all it really mattered. So I think they had a really great deal going on, but then it became a business. And I think that, and I have discussed this with my other business associates, but I think that there is a huge gap and a huge vacuum right now as a result of RSD sort of divesting that company. And now they're kind of like the low limit Tony Robbins kind of thing. Like everybody wants to get on the positivity guru act. And that's what he's doing. So you get a guy like Julian Blank who said, marriage is for suckers, and talks about, and suddenly now marriage is a great thing for him because he's married. And that's another thing I wanted to, that's actually in my notes here today, is I wanted to also talk about how getting married, how a guy, when he gets married, it changes the way that he thinks about what he was before. And there's lots and lots of examples of this. Tucker Max is, the purple pill example is the one I use a lot. And yes, I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to say, well, Rollo, you're married too. How can we take you for, how are we supposed to take you seriously? Because you're married. Like I get that all the time. We'll get to that point here. I want to catch up a little bit. Dingle Yang says, for men before 30 who build their entire life career on blue pill concepts and would like to unplug to the red pill now, what's your advice on marriage? Don't get married. That's my advice for you right now. That's my advice to any guy right now, because the way I'm not anti-marriage. Let's just say that right now. I'm not anti-marriage. I'm anti the way we do marriage now. I think that marriage in the prior to the sexual revolution, it made sense. It was good. And it was something, how you build a family, how you build a strong country. And that's where that was going to be the end of today's show, but I'll go there right now. There's no solutions from anyone right now to actually solve this problem. I know that if you go to the MGTOW side of things, it's like, repeal the 19th, take away women's rights. That's not going to happen. I'll tell you right now, that is not going to happen. So you can either hope for a meteor to hit the planet, or social decline or decay or whatever. And it's probably not going to happen in your lifetime, but And even if it did, who's going to be around to say, you know what, we got to make sure that women are on board with men having authority and men being, that women have a real tough time with the word submit today. So let's not even call it submit. Let's just say, at least recognize a man's authority, recognize a man, like respect a man. Like, how do we get to that point? Because that's where I was going to talk about today. I really wanted to get into respect and also admiration a little bit too, but also the difference between, say, like personal, like having responsibility as a guy, but having 0% authority. That is the greatest failing, I think, of traditional conservatives right now, is they refuse to see that. Because they don't have an answer to it. That's why it's always comes back to, well, God said that we have to get married. Okay, but yet it's still a bad deal for, like, marriage is a very bad deal for guys. I'm sorry to say. Even like guys will say, well, I got married because it's the only way I could have kids, or I wanted to have a mom in her life and in my kid's life. And that's why I did it. I took one for the team, and now I'm, maybe I'm paying for it. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I have a great marriage. I'm coming up in July. It'll be 24 years with my wife. And I got married in 1996, summer of 1996. And it was a good decision for me. But I fully acknowledge it could have been and could still be a very bad decision for me. I know plenty of guys who hit 25 years old or 25 years of their marriage, and everything goes to hell. In fact, a lot of people do. That's why you get what's called gray divorce. So you get these people who got together, and they still, like the guy who says, well, she's not having sex. I'm in a sexless marriage, but I'm going to stick it out for the kids. Okay. Now you're 55 years old and you stuck it out for the kids. Kids are in college, or they're gone. They're adults. And the woman who has not had sex with you for the last 15 years is staring at you across the breakfast table, wondering what, where she's going or why she ever did what she did with you. So is that where you want to be? And I had to put it in terms of you being selfish, but that's where it comes from. And I think that, like, when we talk about like traditional conservatives think that that's a good thing. You sacrificed. Now, remember what we talked about last week when we talked about chivalry, and we talked about how men are always put into a perpetual state of qualification for women. Like, I have to defend my lady's honor, and I have to earn her favor. And it's this constant state of qualification. And I write about this in book 4, is that we've taken that state of qualification. Remember, women are the gatekeepers of sex. Men are the gatekeepers of commitment. Once women have that commitment, particularly in today's, with the way we define marriage right now, that commitment is ironclad for women. Like, in fact, women will do better if they break the commitment. They will be better off if they break the commitment. And even if that's not true, that's the thinking. Is if I'm 39 years old, I'm with this guy, I don't want to spend the rest of my life with him. I'm still hot. Either I hope a lightning bolt strikes him dead, or I'm going to have to divorce him. And then she watches Eat, Pray, Love, or then she watches How Stella Got Her Groove Back, or whatever. I don't know. You tell me what the movie is. And that's what Dalrock used to call divorce porn. And the grass is greener on the other side. Divorce your husband. Doesn't matter if your kids will get over it, kind of thing. Your happiness is paramount, because and why wouldn't it be? Everything is on your side as a woman. You will get cash and prizes if you divorce this beta male that you decided to get with when you were 30 some odd years old, when you were in your epiphany phase 10 years ago. You got with this guy. He wasn't as exciting as the guy in the foam cannon party. But you got with him because he was what was available. He was his chump and his sucker. And maybe you had 2 kids with him, or maybe he adopted your kids, and he's been parentally invested. He's done what he's been told. He followed the old school, old order, social contract. He did what good traditional conservative Christians told him that was his masculine duty. And he's kind of boring, or he's constantly wanting sex that you don't want to have. And you want to get back, and this is as women, you want to get back to those guys who are the fun alpha guys. You want to be a cougar, but you can't do that unless he dies or beta male dies or you divorce him. And it's never been easier. And it's never been easier to, people always are dumbfounded why women, divorce men 70% and instigate divorce in 70% of the divorces, at least in the United States. And if you don't believe me, go watch this great documentary called Divorce Incorporated. You can go just put that into the search engine right here in YouTube search, and you will find Divorce Incorporated is a fantastic, and it's actually kind of old now. I think it was published in 2012, pretty sure. It has Dr. Drew Pinsky was the guy who was the narrator of it, and he and I think Adam Carolla might have been involved in it, but they did an expose or a documentary on the divorce industry, and that's another reason why I say that men should not marry right now. I think it's a great idea. I think as an institution, monogamy, that there's no better way. I mean, that's what we built the country on, right? Was this sort of socially enforced monogamy. And how do we do that? Well, we did that we did that in several different ways. Most of them were social conventions. There was a religious side of things. There's a social side of things. There were stigmas for like single mothers and shame to be brought on the family if a woman did something. And, women wanted to keep up appearances, at least. They wanted to be appropriate. There was buffers against hypergamy, and all of those are gone now. So what happens? Well, divorce goes up, marriage goes down. And I can remember when I saw the divorce rates were kind of leveling off or coming down, and I saw traditional, conservative Christians saying, "Oh, this is great. People are finally, people are getting back into it, and Christians are staying married and blah blah blah." It's like, no, divorce rates are going down because marriage rates are going down. If people don't get married, people don't get divorced, right? So it's not rocket science. You can figure this shit out, but whatever fits into that ideological mold, that's push that in there. These are some great stats. They work great. Well, the problem is when I say don't get married, or a MGTOW, I don't care who it is, whatever MGTOW, red meat distributor you go to says don't get married and you feel good about it, that's fitting into your ideological mold. Now, that's not a good thing. Okay. It would be great. I don't see that as a long-term solution. Like, how do you get people together? And I've said this before, is like, we're better together. Like, men and women are better together than we are apart. We evolved to be complements to each other. Now, men should never make women the focus of their lives. They should only be complements, as I said, to their lives. But that's because that's what women respond to the most, is a guy with ambition and a guy that she can look up to, right? And if you're equals, and if you're in this egalitarian equal partnership, your woman cannot look up to you. You cannot look up to somebody who is your equal. You can only be at that same level with them. And there's no authority right now, because the way we have arranged marriage is we have taken all authority away from men, and we have incentivized divorce for women. So I wanted, and this is in my notes, and if you've seen like what I was going to talk about in today's show about the midway point, I put just one single word, and it's called Threatpoint. Threatpoint is a concept that Dalrock came up with. And what it is it is at what stage, or what is the straw that breaks the camel's back? What is it that will push a woman over the edge? What is it that if there's an incentive to get married, what is it? Or excuse me, to get married. And if there's an incentive to divorce, what is it? And those are things that most, whether I don't care if you're progressive or conservative, those are the things that like a lot of people don't want to look at. So like, think of it this way. If we go and we look at this from an ideological perspective, and then we can look at it objectively. If you look at it from a conservative side of things, we're getting married because that's what we're supposed to do, right? That's what God said. That's what Allah said. That's whatever, right? That's what my tradition and my family tells me that's what a man does. A man gets married and he takes responsibility and he sacrifices and he works hard so that he has, a good family, and he sends off a good son, and he gets married, and they will start the whole process all over again, right? That's from an esoteric, I guess, perspective, that's ephemeral. That's where that makes you a man, right? You don't get the manhood card from the conservative side of the thought bubble unless you get married. That's why guys were hitting me up the other day. They're saying, well, my family thinks I'm gay, or I'll be thought of less at work if I'm not married. I think that's completely false right now. But like a lot of guys still buy into that because that old order, old social contract is still part of their thought process. If I'm not married, then that makes me less than a guy that is married. And again, that is that chivalric ideal that you need to sacrifice. And now I'm going to break this down a little bit further, because when we look at things from an evolutionary perspective, what do men do? We're supposed to protect women. We're supposed to provide for women. We're supposed to be parentally invested. If we're going to, get with that person, we've decided that this is the person we want to breed with, as opposed to just like bang and move on. Because really, I mean, from a strictly evolutionary perspective, in our evolutionary past, it was in a man's best interest to have one, maybe two, maybe a harem, like 4 women that he could be parentally invested in, whether it's a wife or whatever. You're limiting, you can only put so much energy into one thing, but that's reproductively, that's not as efficient as being promiscuous as a guy. So, and Mystery Method talked about this way back in the mid 2000s, is that evolutionarily speaking, a guy who was an evolutionary success was the guy who wasn't parentally invested in 1 or maybe 2 or 3 women, and was protecting them, and he was able to provide for them. He was, established enough, but then he was also able to nail side pieces. And if he had babies with them, he wasn't invested in them, but it was still reproductively, that was what powerful men would do. If you read Alpha God by Hector Garcia, he even talks about this, the most powerful men of history, and it doesn't have to be Christian or Jewish or Islamic, a Muslim. It's like any hunter-gatherer society, there was the chief who had all of his O's off to one side. Like if you look at the dynastic China, that's what the emperor did. He had in the Forbidden City, there was all of his O's were over there, and nobody got. And that's what you want to know why eunuchs were there to guard them, because he didn't want any chance that they were going to impregnate his bitches, right? They didn't want that to happen. Well, that's true of, tribesmen in the Amazon rainforest. That's true of pretty much, that's true of Abrahamic, Father Abraham, right? He's got, he's got maidservants he can knock up, and then he's got Sarah, and he's got he's got 2 wives, and then he's got concubines. Basically, they were concubines, but they called them maidservants because it sounds a little bit better. Same thing, powerful man. Access, they had powerful men found ways to be that top 20% that we sort of take for granted right now. The only thing we've done in modern times, women still want to get with that. It was a better deal for those women to get with the more powerful guy, the more powerful alpha, and be in his sort of soft harem, because they could be relatively sure that they were going to be provided for. They could be relatively sure that they were going to be protected. Usually that guy was sort of like the chief, in a tribal sense. That guy was the chief, whether it's, Father Abraham or the dynastic China or whatever. There was a good idea. There was at least some sort of expectancy that the powerful man, the alpha, is going to be able to, he's going to be interested, certainly parentally interested, invested in his own kids. So it worked out really well. And then, of course, now we're in socially enforced monogamy, and that's where you get what we consider marriage today. So like what a powerful, like noble, like higher born people consider marriage is not what lower born people consider marriage, at least in practice anyways. So, but today I will, and people will say this all the time. It's like, well, Rollo, why do you badmouth marriage? Well, I don't badmouth marriage. All I do is present the facts and say, I don't offer prescriptions. Maybe I should, in this case, maybe I should, but I don't offer prescriptions because I want people to acknowledge what is actually going on. And you're not going to do that when you're ideologically invested in like what you think the solution would be. And that's how you interpret the statistics. So when PragerU says, oh, look, we're at the lowest point ever in marriage. Well, it must be because men aren't manning up. Men are, they're trying to perpetuate their adolescence. It's all men's fault. They need, if we just had more masculinity instead of less. Well, the problem is when they get into those definitions of masculinity, they make the same error that feminists do. They think that there is a good masculinity and a bad masculinity. And we just want the guys who are going to save children from burning buildings. We want that kind of masculinity. Well, sorry, you don't get that. If you want the masculinity that prompts a guy to go save children from burning buildings, that's the same masculinity that makes that guy want to throw a punch in a bar fight. Okay. You don't get those. I mean, you can teach the guy, say, okay, don't hit that guy, but go in and risk your life for this, sacrifice for that. Your responsibility as a man is to sacrifice. Well, guess what? That is exactly what evolution wants you to do as a man. That's why we have the protector dynamic. That's how we, like, when we think about, like, when we get jealous, when we have jealousy as men, we want to throw punches. What happens when you find out that your girl's cheating on you? You want to beat her up, or do you want to beat the guy up who came and knocked your girl up, right? Maybe both, right? But the first thing is, you're going to hit the guy, you're going to hurt the guy who's taken your bitch, who's taken your girl, right? Why is that? Well, because that's what your evolutionary firmware wants you to do. Well, then conservative and religious ideologies come in and they say, well, that's your responsibility. Well, that was all fine and great in a time where there was male authority. There is no male authority now. So what do you do about that, Mr. Christian? Well, if you're a MGTOW, you're going to say, well, let's take away women's rights. That's not going to happen. What are you going to do, Mr. MGTOW? I'm going to protest. I'm just not going to have anything to do with women until things change. Well, that's not going to change. Okay, what do you do, Miss Feminist? You already know that, strong families are, here's the statistics. Mrs. Feminist, Ms. Feminist, why are you against marriage? Well, it enslaves women. Or I'm not against marriage. I'm against, I want equal marriage. I want an equal partner who makes 58% more than I do. I want. Okay, fine. Do you think that marriage is a good idea or is a bad idea? Well, it's good because of kids, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, the problem with that is that by doing so, you're denying evolution, right? Which is the masculine man that you want to look up to. You want him to be dominant. You want him to be a protector. You want all the good sides of that stuff. But he has no authority. Why would he sacrifice everything for you when he has no power over his own life? Now, that also comes back to my other point about power. And I've said this on at least 2 different occasions on this show, is that power, the real definition of power, is not like controlling someone else and beating them down and saying, do what I want you to do. People think of power in a bad sense. That's why I think 48 Laws of Power got such a bad rap, and still does, I think, to this day. But people thought that was a dangerous book because we tend to conflate the idea of power with negativeness, or like tyranny, or abuse, or exploitation, or manipulation, when in fact there's power dynamics all the time. But the real definition of power, at least from the Rollo Tomassi definition of power, is that power is the amount of control you have over your own life. What can you do with your own life? You want to know why, people were willing to die for freedom in the, war for independence from, Britain and whatever? It's because they wanted to have the freedom to do with themselves what they wanted to do. Now you can say, well, they imposed their own will on other people or enslaved people, or whatever. Okay, yeah, I understand. It doesn't change the dynamic. The dynamic is that the amount of power that you have in your life is directly related to the decisions you're allowed to do and allowed to make. And in marriage, men are powerless, basically powerless. And they are at the same time asked to sacrifice constantly, sacrifice your life. That's the really, like, I've heard MGTOWs say, well, it's like a business. It's like a bad business arrangement. Yeah, you're right. It is a bad business arrangement. If somebody, if you had a business partner who pretty much came up with the same arrangement that most modern marriages are about, you'd probably tell them to go pound salt, right? Okay. But that doesn't fix the problem. That doesn't bring men and women together and put them in complementary relationships. So how do we do that? How do we re-empower men? How do we give them responsibility? How do we make marriage a good deal? That's my real question. I wanted to make sure that I got this in here today is if marriage weren't a bad deal, would you still want to do it? If you had authority as a guy, if it was written into the law, right? If your woman cheats on you, then you can take her to the cleaner. Or DNA testing, right? Well, you have as a man, we're going to DNA test every child that comes out of your quote unquote wife, right? Make sure that they're yours so that you can be 100% certain of that. Like right now, like there are laws for OBGYN and doctors and nurses and stuff like that to not tell the guy if the baby's his or it's not biologically his. And so consequently, you got these guys doing like 23andMe and doing these DNA tests and finding out that their kids aren't theirs and their kid is 23 years old. And so, hey, surprise, thanks for sacrificing all of that. Thanks for sacrificing everything that you did in your investment in this kid that was never yours. He was actually Chad's, and I met him in Cancun in a party one time in spring break. Sorry, maybe you can sue a woman for birth fraud now, but you certainly couldn't before. And then even if you could, and you find out like the kid's not yours, would you want to do that? Because most guys, particularly after a long time, they get emotionally invested in the kid. They think it's their kid. They're okay. I love my kid. I went to soccer practice with him. I saw the school play. I put him through college. He's not my kid. He's not biologically my kid. No, sorry. And then we teach those guys not to care about that, right? Oh, it's okay. It doesn't matter. You were the father anyways. You were the real dad. No, you weren't. Not biologically, not from an evolutionary perspective. You got cuckolded and you're supposed to take it and you're supposed to be happy about it. Well, same thing about marriage, right? I mean, we want that sacrifice, whether you're conservative or you're egalitarian or whatever, the expectation doesn't change. Men must sacrifice. Men must provide. Like I was looking at some of these things from like PragerU where they were talking about how, and you'll get this constantly, like, well, men live healthier lives. It was just in this article I was reading. They live healthier lives and they make more money when they're married. Yeah, because they have to make more money. Of course they do. Expenses, was it income rises to meet expense? Sometimes expense rises to meet income, right? So you of course you do, particularly if you're invested in that and you go, well, I'm not going to be a real man or nobody's going to respect me unless I make some money and I provide and I protect and I do all this stuff that I'm supposed to do, whether the kid's yours or not, doesn't matter. This is what a real man does. And that's what you're always going to get from these guys. Or even in an egalitarian, equalist sort of blank slate perspective, I want an equal partnership. Well, you want in an equal partnership where the woman is basically the only real authority in that relationship. That's not an equal partnership. You can pretend it is until you're blue in the face and doesn't make any difference. So, from either side, it sucks. So my question is this: how do you fix it? How do you bring men and women back together and put them into sort of a mutually beneficial, symbiotic relationship between each other? Because until that happens, women are going to go through their party years. They're going to have sex with the guys that they want, who are the fun, exciting guys, have their babies, and they're going to continue to try to find socially acceptable ways to convince you, Mr. Beta Blue Pill guy at 30 years old, right, that it's your responsibility to man up and not be the stepdad, but be the dad who stepped up, right? That you'll get that in churches right now. Well, we've got the single women's ministry. We got to get these guys together. We got to get these guys. It's not that women are making bad decisions by going and having, Chad's baby. It's that these guys aren't manning up. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And so in a gynocentric social order, you're never going to have accountability on women. And why would they? Everything's in their favor when it comes to marriage. Absolutely. So as a institution, I'm not anti-marriage. I think men and women need to be complements to one another. I think men need to be the dominant partner. They maybe even need to sacrifice a little something when they're in that relationship. But that is not how it is now. And that's why I can't advocate for marriage at this time. Maybe that'll change in the future. I don't know. Maybe some new arrangement will come. Like people kept saying, well, if you have male birth control, then that will put the baby equation balanced in a man. Maybe for a little bit, but not any permanent solution. So what's the solution? Well, take women's rights away. That'd be great. How are we going to do it? Tell me how that happens, because there's going to be an army of like simps that will fight you tooth and nail, and they'll fight you because they think that they'll get reproductive access to the women who they're fighting for. They are the instruments of their own extinction, and they'll be happy to do it, and they'll throw the punch with a smile on their face, and they'll take the punch back from you with a smile on their face, because that's what a man does. That's what a real man does. Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. That's why I keep saying, it goes back to the evolutionary side of things, where it's like sperm is cheap, eggs are expensive. Men have this. Oh, that's what we have. We have this built-in protector dynamic. That's part of our mental firmware. Well, when we build social conventions around that and we build religions on that, yeah, here we are. And now, in the wake of the sexual revolution, we have built businesses on that. That's why I encourage you guys to go check out Divorce Incorporated, because businesses, it's so, because of this shift in, we want an egalitarian thing. We want men to man up. We want to put the onus on men, but we also want to have egalitarian equality between the two. But don't worry about it. Even if you made a bad decision, a bad hypergamous decision, I might add, don't worry about it. You have a fail-safe in the divorce industry, and there's lots of guys who make lots of men and women who make money from the moment you're planning your wedding to the when you sign the divorce papers. The ink is drying on the divorce papers. There's an industry. There's a business at every step, from you going, you getting, and not even before that, from you like thinking, how can I propose to her on one knee? Let's go how can I do that and make it romantic? How do I do that? Well, here's Zales, or here's a diamond ring for you. Get on one knee and make it be chivalrous, right? Even before you even ask, before the proposal, there's a business there making money, all the way to who gets the kids and your alimony payment and your child support payment. There's a business. There's somebody. Hey, give me some money. Give me some money. That's what it is, all the way through there, because that's just it. So I'm gonna shift here. I'm coming up on. I've got 15 more minutes. I swear to God, I'm only gonna do 2 hours. And I will get to your questions here, but I wanted to also throw this out there, is that when it comes to the money side of things, that's another aspect that you have to be very careful of, like coming together and having something where the two of you guys are in a relation, like guys, women. For all the times I hear like black pill or MGTOW guys say, well, the juice ain't worth the squeeze, I don't want to do it. Okay, I understand, but if the squeeze wasn't going to cost you your life, would you still be into it? Like, guys still want the juice, they just don't want to do the squeeze. And I'm not going to give you the hard sale. I'm not going to say, well, you guys are, I'm not going to give you he's shaming me. I'm not going to give you that shame. I'm not saying you need to man up or everything. I completely understand why you don't want to do that. Now, my question to you is, if you're MGTOW, if you're black pill, if that wasn't on the table, if the squeeze was not as bad as it is, would you want to do something? Would you change? Would you do something? Or does it all have to be on you? Right? Well, she has to come to me. She has to ask me. She has to suck my dick, and then I'll decide. Right? Well, guess what? You've just changed yourself into the female role. You are now the gatekeeper of sex, and she's the gatekeeper of commitment. Like, if that's the way you want to switch it. So if you're a man, you're not going to escape your burden of performance anyways. But I'm just saying, like, let's just say that it wasn't that bad an idea, or there was protections for you. Let's just say, like, you could go on, you come onto a girl and you learn some game or whatever. Like, you can be completely anti-game. Let's just say that there's no, like, you're not going to, if you could be 100% certain that you weren't going to get like falsely accused of rape, you weren't going to get a sexual harassment thing. Like, the women couldn't file for that. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you can't like hound them, but like, let's just say that, like, you're not, you remove some of the things that most guys complain about. They say that's not worth the squeeze. Okay, what if you remove some of those liabilities or some of that, the risk potential, I should say, of the squeeze, right? Would you still do it? Would you be into it? Would you want that? I think most guys would. I think most heterosexual guys want to get with women. Even the guys who have sex dolls, even the guys who are jerking off to porn, they're still jerking off to porn. They still want it. They still want the juice. So what would you do? What would you do? Like, at what point would you say, okay, it's worth my while? Okay, I can do that. I can come across. Now, here's the other thing is, like, one thing that I see, particularly in conservative circles, is they never put responsibility back on the woman. They'll say, well, I've seen at least one or two videos from like someone like PragerU. I mean, I keep using them, but there's other ones too, but where they will say, well, women, they still throw out these ideas that, like, there's this hookup culture, like in college. I mean, there's hookup culture. Yeah. I mean, courtesy of Tinder, but it's not the hookup culture of, like, say, 2012, or 2014. If anything, it's more efficient than it used to be. And nobody dates anymore. And so I see women will say, well, you shouldn't date anymore. You should just look for a guy that you want to marry. Well, great. That message doesn't resonate with women who have options, and it never will. Even the women who don't have options, who think they have options, it still won't resonate with them either. So I see a lot. I think instead of trying to say, ladies, you have to take some responsibility as well. They'll never say that. That's one of the key points that Dalrock actually made, and that I'm making in book 4, is that particularly in conservative circles and in Christian circles, and well, I shouldn't say pick on that, but like conservative religions, there is this idea, because it's the romantic ideal, because we're still suckered by this chivalric notion, is that women can do no wrong. They gossip. That's like the extent of women's sin is gossip, and even that we kind of like brush on, sweep under the rug. We don't care, because that's just what women do, right? But we want to present them. We God forbid we ever say, a woman not be empowered, or a woman not make decisions based on the romantic ideal for herself. Imagine trying to tell women today that we're going to reinstitute prearranged marriages because the older generation knows better. That's like worshiping the devil. That is to today's feminized religion, to say, like, okay, your father's going to be the one who's going to pick out a husband for you. And even if you gave him the option, say, how about this guy? Like, just the fact that you're doing that, it takes away control of hypergamy. And a gynocentric social order is custom made to give women control over their own hypergamous decisions. Again, having control, power, right, over their own. Like I always say that all the time. Well, women need to be in control of their own body. Well, it's not just their body; it's their decisions too. That's why we got, women will fight tooth and nail for abortion and such, because you're taking away power for them to decide where it is and what is it they want to do. Well, we'll do that for women, but we won't do it for men. We'll actually expect the opposite from men. We'll expect them to. We want them to believe that it is their masculine imperative, their masculine duty, to sacrifice themselves. And again, that goes back to evolution. Men are disposable, but we have to find some way to make that palatable to guys. And if we can do that through religion or through social conventions or even politics, we'll find ways to do that. You want to know why men have historically been the ones who have been conscripted into the army and not women? Because women are the incubators of the next generation, and women have been fat and happy to let men go and kill themselves in wars or whatever. They in Israel, they conscript, women have to serve in the military. Yeah, okay, but that's, again, man bites dog, dog bites man. It's an exception to it's notable because it's an exception to the rule. Throughout history, men have gone and died in wars because they have been conscripted to go and do those things, because they are disposable. Again, another social convention that convinces men of their own disposability. Well, there's no better way to control men, to make men powerless, than to take away their lives. To say, well, you have to be conscribed to the army or whatever, and women don't. You can't even get a driver's license in some states if you don't sign up for selective services. So That's a liability. I remember there was an MRA, like a anti-feminist feminist. I don't remember her real name, but she used to go by the term or by the handle Judgy Bitch. And she had a really great blog for a while. I don't think it's around anymore, but she had this one blog post about how, women have more rights than men. And she went into at least 5 of them, I remember. And one of those was conscription. And, you know, I don't think women should be in the military either. I don't think that they should be subscribed. By why? Well, because I think men need to, that's what we got to do. You know, if that's what it comes down to, if we got to fight, we got to fight. I don't think women should be in that. And this is just me. Maybe I'm just mouthing off my evolutionary imperative. You say, I'm not going to go fight. Okay, well then don't fight. But like, I understand why that exists, but what happens is because I think that is something that's exploitable by other people. And in a gynocentric social order, nothing is more exploitable than men's natural propensity to want to protect women and want to prioritize. I think that what's happened, I think, really since the sexual revolution is we've made that protector dynamic. We've made that that natural impulse of men into a social imperative. At the same time using that imperative to make women powerful, more powerful than men. All right, let me move here and I will answer some of these questions. Okay, I got to him. Mosi, that's where I left off. Mosi says, hi Rollo, my parents, Muslim, keep pushing me to get married, but I don't want to. And they try to shame me and compare me to my younger cousin. I'm 37 years old. Well, exactly what I was saying before. In some cultures and some religions, that's just simply going to be the way that it is. You can try to make a logical case for that, and you're not going to get anywhere with that. You're not going to get anywhere by saying, well, I don't want to get married today, because what will happen is this, and this is and this is not just Christians. This is like Jews. This is Islam. Everything is like, they will use this against you. Like if I go and I say, let's just say I'm a MGTOW or whatever, and I'm a Muslim too, right? Or I'm a Christian, right? What will happen is if I get to that point, I say, look, I don't want to get married because it's a bad deal. It's an all downside deal. It's dangerous. I don't want to, and I don't want to lose half of my stuff. I don't want to, what will happen is you will hear that part right there. That's the only thing people will hear. Well, you're afraid of the risk. You're a pussy because you're afraid of what might happen. Or I'll hear this a lot, particularly what has been suggested to me in the past, and I don't see why people don't follow up on this, but like they will say, well, I talked to Abu American, for example. Abu American has 4 wives. Now he says, I don't know, you can take this up with him, but he has 4 wives. They don't live together. I guess he spreads his time between all of them, but he's essentially a provider because that's what, the religion teaches them, that they got to, if you're going to have 4 wives, you got to at least provide for them. And that's, you're, again, that rich, powerful man dynamic. Essentially, Abu American, you're a Chinese dynastic emperor, right? So you got your women, you're expecting certain things of them. They're supposed to do certain things. And the religion is the buffer. The religion keeps them in line. Because if they do something that's haram, then that's something that, and I don't know if this is maybe cultural or not, you can smack them around. There's punishments, there's liabilities that are at least implied in those religions. Certainly not, maybe in Jewish tradition, I don't know. But at the end of the day, if you're in the United States and you're married, you're officially like governmentally married, women have protections. And they have incentives to divorce you. So what happens, I think that the natural idea is that, well, we're just going to have a covenant marriage. I had a discussion with Dr. Everett Piper, religious, very much conservative guy. He was I think he was a chancellor or principal of Wesleyan College in Wesleyan University in Oklahoma. And very outspoken conservative. I had a talk with him one time on Pat Campbell's show, and we were talking about marriage. And I actually put this argument out there. I said, look, it is all downside risk for men. So why not remove the government out of it, and you can still get married. And so that the religious side of things, if that's your thing, the only way to get married is within the confines of the church. Well, the problem with that is that the church is so wrapped up in gynocentrism that it wouldn't make any difference. But let's just say, for sake of argument, it did. Why would you not want to separate that? So now you're relying on that woman's religious convictions to be a buffer against her hypergamy, and to remove the same protection she would have if she were in a government marriage, let's just say. So covenantal marriage would be religious. Government marriage would be like the official, like what we would consider marriage right now. If you just had that covenant, like you got all your friends together, you got a pastor there, you got married, great, we're married. You never got the certificate. You were just like married before friends and God, like that's your covenant marriage. And a lot of guys will say this, even Dr. Piper told me this. He says, well, my wife would never do that. She would never cheat on me. She would never do these things. And of course, I've heard, when Rich Cooper heard that, he's like, yeah, I've been there. I know, and I do the same thing, right? I want to believe that my wife will be with me for the rest of my life. And I have no reason to believe that she wouldn't be. But I am not so naive as to say that couldn't happen. Because I counsel guys who've been married longer than me, who just got divorced, and they can't believe what happened. I didn't think she'd ever cheat on me. She's in menopause. No, sorry, that's not an insurance policy. For women, the marriage industry is a fail-safe. But so how do you, I was asking you guys before, how do you prevent that? What assurances do you have as a guy? Well, if you say, well, I don't want to get married, like you're saying here, Mosi, if you tell your religious family or your religious leader and say, you know what, I don't want to get married because it's a downside risk, the only thing they'll focus on is you avoiding your responsibility. They'll say you're shirking your responsibility. You're not a real man because you're pussing out because you're worried about losing half of your stuff, right? And they think that, well, if you trusted in God, that wouldn't be an issue for you, right? If you're doing what you're supposed to do, if you're on your knees praying and you're just saying, oh, please don't let her leave me, please, you're doing everything that you should be doing. There's plenty of blue pill beta males who did exactly the same thing. Please don't let her leave me. I love her so much. And then the guy's zeroed out and has a gun in his mouth a month later. So what they'll do is they'll harp on the responsibility of one thing, particularly with religious sets. It's always about personal responsibility. And I got into it even with Dr. Piper. I said, it's like, I can't win an argument against God. Right. So if somebody says, well, God wants you, I say, Dr. Piper, I can't do this. I can't, like if I'm a young man, right? I can't get married. I'll lose half my stuff. We're living in a gynocentric social order. Here's the statistics. Here's the divorce industry. I watched this documentary. I did all this stuff that Rollo Tomassi told me to do and to check out before I ever got on one knee and put a ring in front of this girl. I can't do it. It's absolutely, I cannot do this. It's like MGTOW say, marching guys to the slaughterhouse. It's all that. You know what I get? God wants you to do it. Oh, okay. I guess I better do it. Because you can't argue against God. Right? Or what they're telling you is. So if I say, well, I realize that it looks like you're marching into the fire and you're going to die. And I know that it's all risk. And most likely the parachute won't deploy and you'll hit the ground. But God said you're supposed to jump out of the plane. I guess I better. I've been brought up that way since the day I was born. So I guess I better go and do it. And that's, so you'll get guys who have, you'll get these guys who are like conservative dudes who are in marriages, and maybe they've been married for a long time. Their wives, they play the role very, very well. And these guys think that they're empowered, right? They think that they have authority. That's the great thing about marriage today, particularly amongst the religious set, is they think that because they're believers, that they actually have authority. But at the end of the day, it's not, if push comes to shove, maybe literally, he's going to jail. They're removing him from the house. It doesn't matter if they're your kids. They're being removed from you. But I prayed. No. Sorry, state says no. But she's my wife. I prayed. She, God gave her to me, blah, 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 blah. No, yeah, you snatched the keys from her, and that was technically assault. So you're out. We're going to put you in the tank for a day and a half. Go live with your mom. Go back and live with your parents, until you guys sort this out. I've seen that. I've seen guys do that. I'm using an experience, not my experience, but from a guy I was counseling. He got into an argument with his wife. His wife, one of his wives, was a little drunk, and they were getting in a heated argument. And she was going to take the car and go somewhere, and he knew that she was drunk, so he took the keys away from her. He just took the keys away from her. That was all it took for the cops to take him to jail. He snatched the keys. That's assault. It didn't matter. I mean, again, it's Duluth model feminism, remove the man, doesn't matter. But when you are in this mindset that, well, I'm living the right way, I'm going to church, I'm reading the Bible, I'm praying every day, I'm, I go to temple, I go to, I point towards Mecca and pray every day. The state don't care. The state don't care, because the state is not for men, it's for women. And there's no possible way to argue against that. So the only way you can actually have any kind of real authority is to have a marriage outside of the government thing. And that's impossible. That's next to impossible to do right now. Let's see. Assange Mohammed. I think I am now a beta with some gamma tendencies. Before reading your book, I was into LTR marriage. Are there any correlations related to my nature? Well, here's the thing. Remember that don't think that just because you're beta or you think you're gamma or whatever, that doesn't have to, that's not a death sentence. Okay. That's just because those are personality types. And again, don't take those quite so literally. That's Vox Day talking. And I'm not going to say I don't think they have merit. They do, but don't think that you're locked into just those. I'm a gamma. I'll never be anything else. I'll never be anything but a delta. The fact that you even know what those are, the fact that you have an education in that should be encouraging to you. You don't have to be that way. You don't have to. You get to decide who you want to be. Seriously. So, Blue Diesel says Legends of the Fall, Red Pill 101. Okay. I'll look at that. I might have seen that a while ago. I'm not really sure. Mysterium Lugosi says, I wanted to get married in my 20s due to my religious beliefs. At the time, I felt embarrassed showing up to family events being single. Now I'm much more content. Good. Well, good for you. At least you're educated, right? Again, like I said, I'm not anti-marriage. I'm anti-Pollyanna, never saw it coming. Oh, she's my quality woman, soulmate marriage. That's what I am concerned about. You want to, and maybe I shouldn't be concerned about it. Obviously, marriage rates are dropping, but I don't think that that's a good thing. I think what I get characterized as being anti-marriage. I'm not anti-marriage. I get called anti-marriage from conservatives. Like they'll say, well, Rollo, he's just about spinning plates, and he's about hypergamy, and he's just about like bang as many random sluts as you can. No, I'm not. I never have been. I'm definitely about non-exclusive dating. I think that has some merits. I think men need to expand their horizons and be educated in these things. They're not angry at me, or they want to put me into some sort of classification or something, so people like their believers don't listen to me. But all I do is hold up a mirror. The stats are what they are. You can decide for yourself what you want them to be. I'm just going to tell you these are some dots I've connected. You can decide for yourself. I've been married for almost 24 years now. I'm happily so. I still have sex with my wife. Yeah. And it's still a lot of fun. I got run up the flagpole just the other time. This guy says, well, you don't have sex. It's always hot monkey sex all the time. No, I don't. But sometimes it's freaking great, man. Sometimes it's just like, I'll get a blowjob. Cool. You know what? At least I can get a blowjob. I know a lot of guys who are in sexless marriages right now. My wife looks fantastic. She looks better than a lot. I wish I could show you pictures, but guys who have seen my wife and guys who know who my wife is, they'll concur. She looks better than most 30-year-olds, right? But that's not me flexing. That's just me telling you this, the the facts here. And then so I'll get that from the conservative side, and they'll say, oh, he's anti-marriage. And then I'll get guys on the MGTOW side going, he's been married for almost 24 years. Don't listen to anything he says. What the fuck, man? I can't win. I can't win on either side. I will never be able to win that. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Let's see. Sam Whiskey says, biggest fear men have is finding they're not the father after 20 years. Yeah. Yeah, it is. That's what I call the male existential fear, is to find out that you have invested your entire life into a child that is not your own, biologically your own. So, that's, that's not emotionally satisfying. You should be the best. If you're the man, if you're the real father, it doesn't matter if it's your kid or not. Not according to evolution, not according to pretty much every law and every, you want to talk about why men have a jealousy response, or they have a revulsion response, or a violence response, just stuff like that. Why? If it didn't matter, then why do I feel like beating the tar out of this guy? Or why do I feel like killing my wife because she lied to me and turned me into a cuckold? Why am I having these feelings? Oh, it's your insecure and your masculinity. Come here, Ned. Here's Ned. Here's my boy. See, say hi. That's his goofy tongue. Come here, put your tongue back in, Ned. Put your tongue back in. He's a good boy. All right. Time out. All right. Okay, so that's Ned's cameo for the day. Dog cam. He said the dog cam's not enough. He says, Dad, you're done. Okay, let me get to the rest of these here. Warrior Race says, Rollo, what would you say is the best way to have women raise my children in the most healthy way without being married, and for me to be spinning plates? Family is very important to me, and I want to have kids to have the best. Okay, well, like I was saying, the mystery method is the idea anyways, is that men invest in one woman or maybe two women, maybe more, but not more than like two or three. And then they have like side pieces. And a lot of guys are doing that. I'm probably not the best one to ask to how to do that. Go look at Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate's doing that quite well. I would suggest that in today's age that you don't get married, but you will need to make a lot of money. And only to support your lifestyle. I don't mean like, oh, you got to go buy these girls dinner or something like that. I'm just saying you're going to need that. You need to become, if that's the lifestyle, Warrior Race, if that's the lifestyle you want to live, then you need to become the powerful man. You need to become the powerful kind of man who can do that, who women will share rather than want to be saddled with the beta. I keep saying this all the time. I've said this for years now. Women would rather share. Actually, this is Pook. I shouldn't claim responsibility. Pook once said that women would rather share a successful alpha male than be saddled with a faithful beta. And usually that's when they're in their prime, right? They would rather share that guy with other women than to be saddled with a faithful beta. Well, the problem is you've got to be the successful alpha first. You have to be powerful enough and have the status and have the balls in your pants to do that. So that's where that starts. I think people can do it. I think guys can do it. Like when it comes, I don't necessarily agree with the poly idea, but if there is an upside to poly, it's got to be one guy with multiple chicks, not the other way around. And women will say, "Oh, that's a double standard." Yeah, it is. It's double standard, and it should work because men and women are different. But when I've talked about poly before, poly is becoming really a beta male mating strategy, but it doesn't mean that like if that's the case, why can't there be one like, if you're going to be if you're going to be in a poly relationship, it's best to be the bull. It's best to be the powerful alpha, because that's really what we've done when we were in our hunter-gatherer days, which, by the way, we're kind of returning to, if you think about it. We're no longer agrarian. I'm wondering how much monogamy really makes any difference these days, like social enforced monogamy anyways. I think that monogamy is still a good idea. I think it works the best in the long term for the most amount of people. Monogamy, for socially enforced monogamy, works best for the most amount of people. But we're kind of moving away from that because we don't live in that kind of society anymore. We don't live in that kind of economy, that society. We don't have to be monogamous anymore if we don't want to. We're still clinging to it. Now, here's the other thing is I've heard this before, Warrior Race. I don't know. I've talked to there's an old pickup artist named Yeah Really who was trying to do exactly the same thing you're doing. He wants to have multiple girls and be invested in one or two and have them be really invested in him, and then have kids with them. The problem with that is it's really kind of tough on the kids. So I think really, like, I'm not saying like the nuclear family is ever going to be the ideal. It would be great if we could get back to that, but I think that sort of time machine kind of stuff. It's this romanticized era of, like, father knows best, and it's like this post-war, 15 years of post-war where everybody was, living in the suburbs or something like that. And it's like, yeah, it would be great if we could actually realize that, but I don't think that's going to happen, because I think that when you're with one woman or two women and you're invested in them and those kids, you can apply yourself more, because you can't be everywhere at once. Al says, if Jay Cutler can't hold on to his woman, what hope do I have? Okay, kill yourself. There you go. That's my advice for you. What hope do you have? None. You're done. There's your $5. Warrior Race again says, what would you say is the best way to have women raise my children in the most healthy way without being married? Well, you still have to have at least some semblance of monogamy again. So what is it going to be to you? I don't know. Again, it's your, I don't have a prescription for you, because I don't know you. I don't know the girls. And I hate to be all subjective on you, but you, in any of those cases, you still need to be the alpha that other women want to share. You got to be the guy that other men want to be and other women want to fuck. And if that's not you, then you need to work something out, or you need to figure it out with the women that you're with. It seems to me that the guys who can actually pull that off tend to be much more powerful, dominant personalities, and they've got status and they've got money. So there you go. And I don't mean that like, oh, you got to have money to get laid. You don't. But when you're the arrangement that you're talking about, yes. The biggest Sam Whiskey says the biggest fear men have is finding that they're not the father. I talked about that. Vince C says, do you see men? Did I miss that? I keep missing here. Hang on, guys. Okay, there we go. Jesus, Joseph and Mary. If I don't get to you today, guys, I apologize, but you can just email me and I'll talk to you. Vince C says, do you see men leaving the West in masses once they are financially secure to perhaps have families in more traditional countries? Such as what traditional countries? Name a traditional country? Poland? Remember when Rush decided that he was going to go back to Pussy Paradise in Poland and find himself a nice Polish wife? That conservative country? Is that where I'm going to go? Tell me where I'm going to go. Tell me what a conservative country that I'd love to. I'll pack up my wife right now and go there. Let's go. See, there's no promised land, man. Go read. You probably can't now, but go read Pussy, Poosy Paradise by Rush. Actually, that's one of his best books. That and 30 Bangs. People always say, "Oh, bang this, bang that." And I don't really suggest. Rush has been a grifter for a long time. Let's just be honest. But like, he has written some good stuff, and I would say if you're gonna learn anything from him, the two best books, particularly in hindsight, is 30 Bangs and Pussy Paradise, and that will tell you how he got from where he was to where he is right now. Because he believed that there was some sort of promised land for him. Like, okay, I'm going to hang up my PUA hat and I'm going to go find a good girl in Poland. And he got back to Poland, a conservative country, and couldn't find it because the global sexual marketplace had expanded in the time that he was gone. And they wouldn't have anything to do with him. Or he'd get with a girl and the girl found out that he was just as beta as anybody else and left him. And now he's found God. I mean, I hope honestly, I hope he finds what he's looking for. I really do. I don't think it's going to happen because I think he's a little whack, but I hope he does. I hope somebody comes along and, but at 40, man, I mean, I don't know. By their fruits, you will know them. Put it that way. Joel Castro, do you have pickup coaching in LA? You mean Los Angeles instead of Louisiana? No, Joel, I don't have pickup coaching in Los Angeles. However, I'm working on something with John from Modern Life Dating right now, and I'm not going to make any announcements because we're still sort of in the larval stage here, where we're sort of planning things out. But I'm not getting into PUA. I'm not getting into coaching or anything like that. But I'm working on something that you might be interested. If that's what you're interested in, if you're interested in the application of red pill stuff or in game, like why does game work, you'll definitely be interested in what we're sort of brainstorming about right now. So because I'm not a PUA, I'm never going to be a PUA, but I know red pill, and as I've said before, red pill is the theory, game is the practice. So if I can be the theory and sort of, you know, untangle things for you, and John can be the practice for you and show you how to do things, then so much the better. I would work with maybe even Troy too, so we'll see. Beck Z says, would you agree that Blue Valentine is a good example of what might happen if a man continues living in blue pill? That's exactly why I suggest that. Blue Valentine is an exercise in what not to do and the consequences of what happens when you build a whole life based on your idealistic blue pill bullshit. And if you want to see you want to see a worse scenario than Blue Valentine, look at what's happening to Prince Harry right now. That's the end of Blue Valentine is going to be like nothing compared to what happens to Prince Harry. Prince Harry is a pitiful, almost omega blue pill guy, you know, blue pill beta. From my perspective, you can talk about it, what he is from Vox's perspective, but very much so. In fact, let that be a warning to you. That's the best thing. That best thing I can say, and I suggest that it is a romantic kind of movie, but it is a tragedy, and it will teach you a lot of things. Red pill lessons, valuable ones, without actually having to live through them. In fact, you'll be cringing the whole time with your red pill. Like when I used to tell guys to watch that, it was before we were talking about like red pill lens or anything. I go, there's a lot of lessons in this. Check this out. And guys were just like, oh no, you know, it was like watching a train wreck or something. Mr. C says most dates, once they hear I don't have any interest in marriage, lose interest. Sure they do. I'm not sure how to continue to be part of the dating scene without being dishonest to potential girlfriends. Well, that's why you spin plates, my friend. That's what plate spinning is for, is to separate the wheat from the chaff. Like if you can honestly, like I was talking to Josh Fluke, like Josh Fluke does not want kids and does not want to get married. He has his reasons. I would say most of this is probably because he wants to protect himself. And that's what most MGTOWs will say too. I'm not going to get married because that will, you know, it's funny to listen to young MGTOWs who've never been married. And then you listen to post-divorced men who have found MGTOW and listen to what they have to say. Because the guys who don't have any experience with divorce, well, they think they do. They think they're wise. They think they'll get all up in your grill and go, man, you never get married. You'll get screwed, man. Blah, 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 blah. And I would challenge any guy who is, you know, anti-marriage. Again, I agree with you, but I would challenge you to find something good. Like, why would you want to get with a woman? What is it about women? Like, why would the juice be anything to you? Like, yeah, well, you're saying worth the squeeze. Okay, why would you even think about the squeeze in the first place? Like, what is it about that? Well, men want to get with women. Men would I think idealistically, we would love to have a woman. Like I've said this before, we want a woman who loves me as much as she love her as much as she loves me, or I love her, or loves me as much as I love her. Right? That idealistic thing. Like, oh, well, I got to find my one. Why do we get so wrapped up in that? Why is that such an easy fantasy for us? You know, or guys who are fearful that they might not find their one, or they better do what they're told, or they're going to end up lonely and no kids and die in some assisted living facility from emphysema. I don't know, you know, or hard drinking. I don't know, whatever. Why is that even a thought in their heads? You know, because we have natural, we naturally want to get, we like women, we want to get with women. It's just that it's hard to do right now. It's hard to justify in our heads even. A guy talking about, like, I talked to Josh too. I'm like, you sure you don't want to get married? He's 29, right? Or he's going on 30. Or I talk to guys who maybe are in their 30s. I don't want to get married. I'm just hitting my stride. Good. Do that. I'm not going to try to convince you to get married if you don't want to get married. I'm just saying that. What is it about? Why are you even having the discussion? Why are you even coming to me saying, well, I'm never going to get married? Okay. Why do you feel like you have to tell other people, don't get married? You shouldn't do it. You just warn them. I tell them that all the time. If that's all it is, okay. But, guys still want to do it. Why do guys still, even in spite of all this, like knowing it, like why do red pill guys get married? Right? Why would that even be an appeal to them? Because there's something inside. There's something that we want to have kids. I would love, I would hope that every guy on planet Earth could find a girl who is hot and fun and it looks up to them, admires them, they're in a, dominant submissive relationship, and not like, oh, I'm going to pound you down. I'm just saying, like, they look up to the guy, right? Like, he's the decision maker. He has some actual authority. I would love that. Ideally, that would be great. In a complementary relationship, that would be freaking awesome. Do I think that's going to happen? No, but idealistically, I would love for that to happen to every guy, right? If I could find a way to sell that, I would make $1 million. Let's see. PragerU is correct about, this is Michael Kerr. PragerU is correct about marriage only if the wife puts in the work to be an actual helpmate and helpmeet, instead of a complaining opportunistic tradcon thought. Yes. Well, what I think is interesting, Mike, is you will have women who went through all this, like they had the alpha's kids, and they never were able to find the sucker to marry her later on, because guys didn't want, and naturally so, guys have a natural revulsion for getting involved with a woman who already has kids. Why? Well, because evolutionary speaking, it's not in their best interests. Sorry, ladies. That's really, if you want the nuts and bolts of it, that's why. It's not because they've been taught that way or they're some chauvinistic, misogynistic assholes. It's because that's part of our hardware. Stay away from that one. Go after this one. She's fertile and young and has no children, and this one has already been sampled and used. Do I want to get into that? Well, the guys who are the guys who are going to be into single mothers are going to be the guys who don't have options. The guys you don't want to get with are not ideal for you. So you've got to convince yourself. They've got to convince themselves, and that's where you get like psychological stuff and all that other great stuff. Yeah, but so expecting women to do the work is next to impossible. It would be great. Yeah, PragerU will be right on the money, right? But that's not going to happen. And even if they were promoting that, it still wouldn't matter unless you can change society from a legal legislative perspective. And that's not going to happen either. Because the same guys, PragerU and all the traditional conservatives, they all believe in egalitarian fempowerment too. So don't get your hopes up. RDF 2050 says, I brought your first book in April by Donovan Sharp. It's very informative. For what? Thanks for saying. Well, thank you very much. We're gonna love number 4 too. Sam Bada, is this you? Oh no, this is YOLO. He says, who is the people behind this is YOLO. Who are pronouns, my friend? Learn your goddamn pronouns. Who are the people behind feminism in society? I did not see any powerful political party or organization who advocates for feminists openly. Yes, because you never had to. Feminism works for everyone. Right? It works for, you can say, well, what political party does it work for? You know who it works for? It works for the Democrats. It works for the Republicans. It works for Marxists. It works for traditional conservatives. It works for people who are against that and this and everything else, because that is how endemic feminism is. It's the feminine imperative. That's why I separate those two. There's no Illuminati. Sorry, guys. I know some of you probably think. It's not the Jews, okay? It's not the social Marx, or was it the socialist Marxist or whatever. I can't remember what was that other one, Marxist something. It's not the Marxists. It's not the. It's everybody. It's all of this, right? It's it's the Rockefellers. They came and they created feminism to destabilize America. Yeah, and them too, and everybody else. Yes, because it works. And the thing about feminism is this: is it fluidly moves amongst ideologies. It fluidly moves amongst political parties. That is why it has, like, I kept saying that. I said this, and I said this on last week's show, is that feminism 1.0 was chivalry, the bastardization of chivalry, because it covertly shifts gender power by using men, again, what we were just talking about this whole show, by using men's protector instincts, by saying real men do this. And if I can convince you that real men do this, I can convince you of feminism. If I can say, well, real men who aren't insecure in their masculinity, they believe this. You want to know why feminism is so endemic? It's because of that. Because it plays on men's natural proclivities, and then also the competitiveness amongst men, and also the intersexual dynamics that go on between, well, actually even other women too, but like men and women. Throwaway 8080 says, hi Rollo, if you remember the old poly relationship article with 5 guys and 1 girl, one of the guys was arrested for physically abusing the baby. Yes, I've talked about that already. AL says men have to, oh, there it is. I'll put this on the screen. Men have to be on par, opportunistic, non-committal, pragmatic, amoral, ruthless to succeed in life. And guess what? Women find those dark triad traits very attractive. Tom Bombadil says, new manosphere rule. You can't ever say Troy. Put respect on his name, okay? I don't care. I work with Troy. I don't work with Troy. Troy's actually a cool dude. I don't think you guys realize just how cool Troy is. I'm going to keep saying Troy just to piss you off. Eugene Moran, this is the last one. Don't send me any more. I am totally fine dying on assisted living with no girl and no kid and no funeral and being buried in an unmarked grave and being erased from history because I refuse to be a blue pill beta. Well, with the bar set that low, Eugene, I think you're going to make it. All right, I'm done. I've gone way over once again because I love you guys. I love you guys. So, and so does Ned. And he's out of the room now. All right, guys. So hopefully this has been also informative and educational for you. I hope you guys liked. Joel, if I missed your question, hit me up an email. I will get back to you. It's rtrationalmail.com. Book 4, I'm in grind mode right now. So that's coming soon. I will be back on Wednesday. I hope you guys like this. As far as the Rule Zero convention that we're doing, it is going to be October 2nd through the 4th. We have Aaron Clary is confirmed. We're looking at 4 other guys now. So Aaron Clary will be one. We're looking at 4 other speakers. I don't have 100% confirmation from any of them yet. So, but they're going to be people that you guys are going to want to hear. I'm not looking, I will try to keep as best I can my goal in selecting speakers and helping out with this anyways, I think, and the guys would agree with me, is finding a good diverse group of guys who can speak to, like, we're not all saying the same thing. And I'm not going to say the same thing as like Rich is going to, or Ryan or anything. So that's coming up October 2nd through the 4th in Las Vegas. Once again, if you have already purchased tickets and you're holding out, thank you very much for doing so. I've only had 2 people ask for refunds and they were promptly refunded. So of the 24 tickets I sold originally, there's still 22 of you out there. So that's coming up soon. We're going to add another day to it. So I'll probably end up increasing the price a little bit because we put one more extra day on there. And that's so the other guys can make some money too, for showing up and doing their thing. We're going to do extracurricular things too. We'll have an announcement once we have everything set in stone and then we start doing stuff. I've got some other things. I got some other irons in the fire with some of the other guys from Rule Zero as well. And Wednesday, I will see you guys on Wednesday. I'm not sure what the topic's going to be or what I'm going to do. If you have suggestions, let me know. All right, guys, I will see you guys soon. And thanks for another great show.